When everyone laughs as Miles steps up to the altar with his offering, a crushed bag of gas station hot chips. It is all he has. Altars have been appearing in other cities for 3 weeks. Fair Lake treated them like viral disaster clips, rich entertainment, and just one more thing poor people cannot afford to fear: crown. Mall was supposed to be a spectacle, not history. A second earlier, the crowd had been staring at the chips in his hand like he dragged trash into a sacred place. To be fair, it looks worthless. The bag is half crushed, the corner torn, with red dust already sticking to his fingers. He only bought it because it was cheap enough to count as dinner. The rich guy beside his ex lifts a black card and smiles. The altar wants real value, he sneers, not cheap snacks, but the altar disagrees. The stone mouth opens. Miles pours the chips right in. For 1 second, nothing happens. Then the altar screams. Every single expensive offering around it burns black instantly. Gold watches, diamond earrings, velvet boxes, cash. All of it turns to ash as if the altar is deeply offended. How dare they try to impress it with price tags? Only his offering stays lit. Then a black system window opens above the stone. Mythic Reward detected. The laughing cuts off so fast it feels rehearsed. That is when the wealthy crowd stops smiling entirely. The altar splits open. Inside, the red light sits a black egg the size of a football helmet, crossed with pulsing red veins. For one breath, nobody moves. Then a whisper breaks the silence. Take it from him. The whole plaza remembers how to be greedy all at once. Then the first hand reaches for it. A woman wearing pearls lunges first. A man in a suit screams, grab it. Security guard reaches for his radio instead of his baton, proving he is way smarter than the suit. That rich man is Troy Bancroft. He takes one step forward, then stops cold as the red light crawls up his shoes. He tries to recover by doing the only thing guys like him trust. He offers money. Name a price. Troy calls out to the crowd, I will buy it before someone gets hurt. Miles looks down at the black card on the pavement. You already made your offering, he says, and the altar rejected. A few people nearby hear him. That matters because fake authority hates witnesses more than insults. His ex, Lydia Wren, whispers his name. She takes half a step toward him, looking at Troy as if asking permission to care. That tiny pause is the cleanest breakup gift she ever gave him. Even with red light on her face, she's still checking which man has the better price. She says his name differently now, not like a burden, but like a door she threw away, and suddenly wants to check if it still opens. Miles shoves the egg under his hoodie and backs away from the altar. The suited man blocks his path, claiming the reward came from a public altar and belongs to whoever can protect it. Miles looks at the gold ash on his cuff. Then protect your watch better, Miles retorts. The man's face purples. He reaches out anyway. The red veins on the egg pulse once through his hoodie. The guy flinches before even touching him, as if something behind Miles' ribs just opened an eye. That is enough. He slides past him, heading toward the service hallway beside the closed department store. Lydia hurries after him, heels clicking loudly on the tiles. She calls for Miles, begging to talk. That almost makes him laugh. All those months he spent waiting for her to talk, back when his card kept getting declined, when his apartment was totally empty, and her birthday gift cost more than his actual groceries. Now one red beam made talking to him incredibly urgent. Troy caught her wrist before she could reach him. Troy told her not to chase him, though his voice had lost its spark. Troy claimed he would not get far, he told Lydia, but loud enough for him to hear. And the worst part was, Troy was absolutely right. By the time he reached the service hallway, Crown Mall Plaza had already turned into a giant trap. Phones were pointed at every single exit, while people started shouting out random guesses. Some called him lucky, some called him a thief, and others claimed the egg was public property. They were slow. He had spent 3 years working as a logistics analyst for people who paid him like it was charity work. He knew the loading doors, delivery windows, camera blind spots, and exactly which emergency exits had broken alarms nobody ever fixed. Because the owners were so cheap, old humiliation finally had a real use. He ducked behind a row of stacked folding tables, kicked open a side door, and slipped into the employee corridor. Behind him, a security guard started shouting for him to stop. He did not stop. The egg shifted against his chest. For half a second, he thought it was cracking. Instead, true sight flickered over his own hands. A secondary mythic compatibility reward had unlocked. True sight reads hidden altar demands, match resonance, reward grades, item effects, and limited consequence traces, cost, attention, risk. Attention cuts both Ways and resonance is not an answer key. That last part bothered him. More than the guard, the first half was tempting, showing him what alters wanted. He could see what rewards did, feeling when trash was close to becoming a jackpot, but close is not exact. Wrong guesses could still get him killed. The second half meant something could see him back. True sight cut across the egg. Under his hoodie, Abyss Drake egg, mythic grade, dormant companion seed. It required blood, calamity essence, and repeated feedings to hatch. Bond status. Unclaimed, high exposure risk while unhatched. Major trouble ahead. A mythic dragon egg was pressed against his ribs, and the first thing it wanted was something he did not have. Blood. A door slammed behind him as two men entered the corridor from the plaza. They were not filming, nor were they shouting. They walked with the ugly patience of men who treated fear like a negotiation tool. One of them held a pocket knife low by his thigh. He rounded the next corner before they could speak and shoved through a maintenance exit into the alley behind the mall. The afternoon air smelled of grease, exhaust, and panic. A siren wailed somewhere east of the plaza. Suddenly, every phone in the alley screamed at once. His phone lit up. An emergency notice from the Federal Anomaly Response Office. Read: light event confirmed in Central Fair Lake City. Avoid contact with the unknown. Reward holder. Report any alter violence, reward theft, or abnormal biological objects. Unknown reward holder. The agency used to be a quiet federal office for strange things polite news never named, but the alter era dragged them into daylight with everyone else. Now that was him, an abnormal biological object. That was the egg pressed against his ribs like a second heart. The two thugs from the corridor burst into the alley. The man with the knife saw him, then saw the emergency alert on his own screen. Greed twisted his expression faster than fear. He demanded it. Hand it over, the thug warns, but he just snaps back that the creature liked his chips. Definitely better than their life choices. Meanwhile, the partner looks past him toward the street. The cops are coming, he warns, and Pharaoh too. They need to take it now or lose it. First honest thing he has heard all day. That massive beam did not keep him safe. It had only made him a target. He grabs a metal trash can lid and hurls it. The heavy metal slams straight into the pocket knife guy's knees, and he bolts immediately. He did not win that fight, he just bought 3 seconds. That is all broke men ever get. Unless they steal more. He sprints down the alley, vaults a chain, and cuts behind some shops. Behind him, someone shouts that he headed south. Naturally, he goes north instead. By the time he reaches his apartment building, the red beam has finally faded from the sky. But the city has not stopped looking up. Every single lobby screen is playing the exact same clip. Red light, his cheap hoodie, and Lydia standing there uselessly right beside that expensive Maybach. The internet captions are already fighting over the details. Broke man blessed, mall thief escapes, mystery egg stolen. None of them have the headline right. The real headline should be, local guy reads the rules, and rich people absolutely hate it. His hands shake as he locks his apartment door. The mysterious egg sits on his cheap coffee table. Its black shell pulses softly under the dim ceiling light, looking completely out of place. Right between a stack of overdue bills and that old mug Lydia always hated. Checking his phone, he sees Lydia has already called 6 times. A 7th call pops up right now. He just lets it ring. Then, without hesitating, he blocks her number and deletes the contact entirely. A petty little victory, but it feels incredibly good. The black egg pulses, almost like it approves. Leaning in closer, he activates his true sight skill to read the pulsing shell once more. Abyss Drake egg, grade mythic. It requires blood. Requires calamity essence, high risk while unhatched. Outside, sirens wail closer. Helicopters swarm over the city. A loud federal alert flashes on screens. It warns all citizens not to go after the red light rewards. Pretty ironic, right? The people who actually follow warnings are not the ones he fears. On the table, the Drake egg pulses again, slower this time, like a hungry, patient beast. He has officially proven the absolute first rule of this wild new era. Gold and diamonds hold no real value. Only the right trash in the right mouth matters. Suddenly, his true sight skill flashes one more glowing line across the edge of his vision. Offerings remaining before midnight, too. The city is actively hunting him. The egg needs blood, and he has exactly 2 more chances to become too dangerous to touch. He makes sure to avoid the main streets entirely after that massive red beam. Mall Plaza is swarming with cameras, and every siren sounds like it knows his location. Kicking the lights off, he jams a heavy chair right under the door handle. Standing over the pulsing mythic egg, his true sight skill mocks him once again. Glowing words hover right before his eyes, personal offerings remaining. Too perfect, the entire world has officially turned into some giant, crazy god casino. And here he is on a strict countdown, holding a hungry egg with 0 instructions. Staying locked inside his cheap apartment would be a total death sentence. Using those last 2 offerings in public would be just as bad. He chooses a third option. He sneaks down the fire escape, carrying the precious egg wrapped inside a simple laundry bag. The dark streets around his building are far from empty. In fact, they are much worse. Paranoid neighbors peek from behind closed curtains, silently filming every little movement. Stranger carrying anything bigger than a lunchbox. Across the street, one man stared at his laundry bag too long, so he smiled at him. The man looked away. Fear was already learning manners. He needed rewards that solved immediate problems. The egg was too visible, his body too weak, and his apartment. Shoebox with a deadbolt his landlord could open with a key and a board. Expression, true sight did not give him a convenient map, it gave him pressure. Appetite and match quality when standing close to an altar, so he moved. Through alleys and closed storefronts, checking every pale glow from a distance, refusing anything that smelled like a gas. Wrong offerings did not just fail, they destroyed you. He still remembered a graphic clip. Shaking video of a man offering a hunting knife to an altar that wanted mercy. The altar opened like a throat, and something with too many arms dragged him inside. Talk about terrifying. He watched 3 seconds and shut it down. Video, no research spiral, exact matches only, and true sight only gave him the scent. He still had to choose the bait. The first usable altar waited. Inside a shuttered photo booth near a dead food court entrance. Its stone surface looked like a tiny stage with 4 burnt curtains. Nobody else had bothered with it because the offering slot was narrow and the reward glow inside was almost gone. True sight peeled the lie open, hidden. Demand, burn a betrayal you still pretend does not hurt. Reward, heart. Control, memory item, strongest nearby resonance, personal image tied to. Romantic severance, Lydia again, talk about expensive even after he blocked her. The last physical piece of her in his wallet was a photo strip from the year he still believed effort could make someone loyal. 4 tiny pictures. Her cheek against his, her hand flashing the bracelet he had put on a credit card. His smile tired and stupid. He held the strip over the altar. For a second he hated that his hand hesitated, then his phone buzzed with another blocked call notice. That fixed it. He lit the photo with a cheap lighter and dropped it into the slot. The stage altar inhaled the flame. The photo did not burn normally. Lydia's face blackened first. His stayed pale until the last second, then curled into ash and vanished. A narrow blue light snapped out. 3 paper tickets slid from the altar. Old theater stubs with scorched edges and blank backs. True sight labeled them before he touched them. 4th act stub, grade epic. Effect, force 1 target within striking range to relive the emotional collapse they fear most for 3 seconds. Single use. Per stub, 3 seconds. Most people would call that short. People who had been attacked knew 3 seconds was a fortune. He pocketed the 3/4 act stubs and left before the altar attracted another desperate gambler. 1 offering down. 1 real tool gained. 1 wound converted into ammunition. Personal offerings remaining before midnight. 1 petty, yes, useful, even better. The second altar took longer because he refused 3 tempting traps. A watch altar wanted the first breath of a newborn. A silver bowl wanted teeth from a living father. A cracked mirror wanted a face admired by more than 1,000 people. Fair Lake City had become honest about how ugly desire could be. Near midnight, he found the right altar in the basement of a closed used bookstore. The store gate had been twisted open by someone much stronger than him, but whoever broke in had left after seeing dusty paperbacks instead of jewelry. Rich people never looked twice at cheap shelves. The altar sat between 2 collapsed bookcases, a smooth black cube with mouth like a keyhole. Around it lay failed offerings, coins, rings, a broken tablet, cash still smoking at the edges. His true sight sharpened, showing a hidden demand, a container of nothing that can still carry everything. The reward, private storage space, strongest nearby resonance, an empty container with meaning. People pretended to understand. He almost laughed. On the bottom shelf beside his shoe sat a thick philosophy book nobody had bought for years. The cover was water-stained. The spine looked bitten. It was exactly the kind of book people praised in college and never finished. He picked it up, flicked 1 page, and saw a sentence about emptiness being the only honest vessel. Good enough, he told the altar. A noise came from upstairs. One floorboard creaked. He froze. Someone else was inside the store. The altar's keyhole mouth pulsed. Once impatient, a specific question, a specific risk. Offer now and maybe draw. Tension or run now and waste his last chance before midnight. He shoved the philosophy book into the keyhole. The altar folded the book without tearing. Pages vanished into darkness, one sheet at a time. The basement went silent, so silent he could hear whoever stood upstairs stop moving. Then gold light burst through the floorboards, not red, not mythic, still loud enough to kill his anonymity. A black cube dropped into his palm, smaller than a dice box. Cold enough to burn. True Sight named it a legendary grade pocket vault, with private dimensional storage bound to its owner, living beings restricted, unless bonded or dormant. In the abyss, his drake egg pulsed under his laundry bag as if insulted by the word dormant. He touched the cube to the egg. The egg disappeared. His arms finally went empty. A space opened in his awareness, dark and precise, holding the egg where no landlord, thief, camera, or greedy ex could reach it. He added the 2 unused 4th act stubs, the lighter and the hot chip wrapper, because he was sentimental about profitable garbage. Personal offerings remaining before midnight. 0. Then the man upstairs came down. He did not hurry. That was the first warning. He wore a rain jacket, though the night was dry, gloves though the basement was warm, and a hardware store hatchet hung loose in his right hand. The hunter's eyes locked onto his empty hands, then to the gold light still leaking from the altar. A cracked ring on his thumb gave one dull brown pulse. The shelf beside him bent inward, not from his hand touching it, but from pressure rolling off him. He was not guessing at violence. He had already bought some. Red light at the plaza. The man said, "Gold light here. You are either lucky or stupid." He stepped away from the altar, knowing people kept offering him those exact options. He smiled, demanding the cube and whatever else the kid had pulled today. He saw him hide it and had seen enough. The hunter came down the steps and swung the hatchet at his knee. No speech, no negotiation. Good, clean predators. Wasted less time. He threw himself sideways, hit a bookcase, and pain flashed through his shoulder. The hatchet chewed into the shelf where he had been. The hunter rips it free and charges again, moving way faster than any normal human should. A ring on his thumb glows, his shoulder blurring. He already has system rewards. Realizing this saves our main character's life by crushing his pride. This is no ordinary mugger. He is up against someone who truly understands this brutal new system. The hunter kicks a bookcase, sending the massive shelf flying straight toward him like a truck. Our protagonist dives flat to the floor as rotten paper explodes right over his head. The basement fills with thick dust and the sickly sweet smell of decaying glue. The hunter laughs, mocking him for not even knowing how to bind his stolen loot. This proof of past murder shows the hunter thinks he is completely safe sharing this advice. A second swing comes at him. He grabs a 1/4 axe stub from his vault. Acting on pure instinct, the weapon slaps into his palm as if it belongs there. The hunter's eyes widen in shock. Our guy presses the stub directly against his opponent's wrist. As the hatchet drops, the blue ticket burns. The hunter stops breathing. His face contorts without a single wound. It is not blood flowing, but lost memory. His mouth silently forms an unfamiliar name, his entire body locking up instantly. He is trapped inside his own mind's worst collapse. 3 seconds remain. Our protagonist grabs the hatchet handle, rips it free, and drives the blade straight home. The edge cuts deep into the hunter's throat. He snaps back to reality just as life fades. That awful final sound is going to haunt our protagonist for a very long time. He stumbles back to vomit behind some old boxes, so much for keeping his hands clean. 10 seconds pass, and then the dead man's coat splits with light. 3 small glowing orbs roll out from his body. The items stop at his shoes, a cracked bronze charm and that dull thumb ring. Along with a paper-thin blade smelling of rust, his true sight skill pulses over them. The system displays a clear message: unbound rewards, owner deceased, ready to claim. Looking from the corpse to the rewards, the grim reality of this new world sinks in. The hunter was not crazy. He came to kill because murder actually pays now. With badly shaking hands, our protagonist sweeps the dropped loot into his pocket vault. The spatial storage accepts them silently. No ceremony, no judgment, just simple inventory. The dull thumb ring actually tries crawling toward his wrist before getting swallowed by the vault. That creepy little movement exposes a dark truth. This world is getting uglier by the second. The system only cares about who holds them once the previous owner stops breathing. The situation gets worse. Upstairs, thunder rolls as heavy gray rain begins falling. Rain pours outside the broken storefront, hard and sudden despite the clear sky. Runoff water slides under the door, dripping down the basement steps with a hiss. The glowing altar dims, and the dead hunter's blood begins to thin out. The floor seems to drink it. Our protagonist backs away as the rain reaches the corpse. Flesh, clothes, wounds, and all traces of the messy struggle begin to fade away. The body does not dissolve, it is edited out. One blink and it is gone. The basement altar vanishes next, leaving only dust and a dry circle of concrete. Only a clean, dry circle of concrete remains. He does not fully understand this rain yet. At the time, he thinks it merely erases evidence. That word becomes funny later. But for tonight, it is enough. The mysterious downpour has completely cleared the entire scene. No body, no blood, no altar. Every single trace of his first kill is gone. Along with the evidence, any comforting illusion about this new era has been stripped away. A brutal food chain, people with rewards could be harvested, and the rain cleaned the table. He waited until the gray water stopped hissing, then climbed out. Through the back door with empty hands and a full pocket vault, the street smelled washed and wrong. No police tape, no federal trucks, no crowd, no corpse, just two remaining fourth act stubs, a legendary storage space, 3 stolen rewards, and a mythic egg hidden where nobody could frisk it away. It should have made him feel untouchable. Instead, every dark window looked like a watchful eye. If kill and claim was real, then the strongest people in Fair Lake City had every reason to stay quiet, hunt privately, and let fools keep posting happy altar videos. At dawn, he needed walls no landlord could open. He needed blood no grocery bag could provide, and he needed a place where the next body could disappear before someone else claimed his loot. By sunrise, the gray rain had washed the reward hunter out of the world, but it had not solved the egg's hunger. He tried the sane option first, buying a sealed bucket of butcher blood at a back door, no questions, because Fair Lake City had already become the kind of place where no questions cost extra. The abyss drake egg sat inside the pocket vault until he pulled it out over his bathtub, black shell, red veins. Patient appetite, he poured the blood into a plastic basin. The egg pulsed. Once, then it went still. True sight gave him the bad news like a slap. Hatching requirements unmet. Ordinary blood, low value, scale required. Sustained supply, high quality, calamity essence or altar touched. Vitality, he stared at the bucket, muttering about how picky the egg was. The egg did not answer. It only warmed against his palm like a spoiled rich kid. Waiting for the real meal, that was the problem with Mythic Rewards. They did not care that he was broke. They only cared that he kept feeding them. The gray rain had taught him another lesson, too. His apartment was not a safe base. It was a box with neighbors, cameras, maintenance keys, and a bathtub full of evidence if the rain did not arrive on schedule. He needed blood. He needed privacy. He needed a place ugly enough that nobody looked twice at. Drains, Fair Lake City handed him the answer. Before noon, because panic makes people cheap, his old supervisor texted while he was washing blood off his tub, 3 missed messages, all asking why he had not logged in for a shift. Nobody would remember if he died. He texted that he found a better position and then blocked the number. Small career move, but a huge morale boost. Every street had a new kind of business corpse. Restaurants were closed because cooks had run off to gamble offerings. Delivery trucks sat abandoned because drivers were chasing altars. Store owners who had laughed at emergency planning were suddenly begging for private security, generators, and cold cash, and food businesses were bleeding fastest. He heard the first useful argument outside a supply office, where 3 owners were yelling over a locked door. One man in a stained jacket kept saying Northcut meats could not hold another week. The workers were gone, the inspectors were not coming, the freezers were failing, buyers had vanished because nobody wanted to own a meat plant. While Fair Lake's first red light collapse chewed through the city, nobody except him, the stained jacket man, saw him watching and snapped. Unless he wanted to buy a disaster, he should walk. He asked how much for the keys today. The man blinked. Drowning people never expect the quiet observer on the curb to ask for the anchor. Still, he tried to recover. With his pride boasting the place used to clear 6 figures, he dryly replied, used to. Now the freezers are warming, your workers are totally gone, and every passing hour of owning Northcut meats makes him poorer. His jaw tightened. Panicked sellers hate accurate math. The seller named a ridiculously low price that would have been insulting just last week. Desperate that morning, the reward hunter's wallet and one low-grade trinket sold for fast cash covered emergency control. This was not clean. Ownership, it was keys now, cold hard cash now, and a problem too ugly for anyone else. To steal before sunrise, he wanted access, the seller wanted out. Talk about a perfect match. Honest, the seller pushed a ring of keys across his truck's hood and pointed. Down the road leading out of the industrial strip, Northcutt Meats is. Yours to ruin tonight, the seller said. He picked up the keys. Too late, that's why. It was cheap, the seller's mouth twisted in anger, wanting to insult him. Then his phone lit up with another alter alert, reminding him he had already sold him the problem. 10 minutes later, he stood inside Northcutt Meats, breathing cold blood and old bleach. The giant meat plant was not impressive in the way rich people liked. No fancy marble, no glass walls, no front desk smiling at wealthy investors, just concrete. Floors, steel hooks, drains, freezer doors, cutting tables, and the kind of silence that made every drip sound guilty. A night shift cutter was loading a crate into his car when he arrived. The worker saw the keys in his hand, stating, "The owner said payroll was dead, so he was taking what he was owed." He looked at the crate, old knives, spare hooks, 2 boxes of gloves, useful but not worth fight before he knew the building. Take the gloves, he told him, leave the steel. He stared at him like he might argue, but then a federal alert screamed from his phone. And whatever courage he had borrowed left with the ringtone, he dumped the hooks on the cold pavement and quickly drove away with only the gloves. First problem removed without any noise. The first reward was simple logistics. Space, locks, delivery trucks, freezing units, drains, a property so ugly that nobody would call it glamorous, yet valuable enough that everyone would need it once hunger got louder than pride. But wait, the real prize was hiding deep under the kill floor. His true sight flickered like crazy every time he crossed the central drain. Not a full label on the concrete, not at first, just a faint red pulse like the building had a heartbeat. It had been hiding from every owner before him. He followed the pulse to a rusted freezer door behind hanging plastic strips. The seller had claimed that door led to dead storage. He had been half right. Behind it was a narrow stairwell that should not have fit inside the building. The air below smelled older than meat, wet iron, burnt sugar, grave dirt. He pulled the hatchet from the pocket vault and went down. At the bottom sat an altar of black red stone shaped like a crown forced into the floor. It had no public glow. No countdown crowd, no greedy hands piled around it. Thin red lines ran from the room's drains directly into its base, and every single line beat slowly, waiting. Sight opened so hard his eyes watered. The blood crown altar, grade permanent. A private altar, designed to convert discarded rewards into core blood. It is completely exempt from public offering limits, but refuses clean wealth. It feeds only on ugly leftovers and unwanted rewards touched by death. Public altars give desperate people 3 quick chances before throwing them out. But this dark thing sits under his floor, waiting to be fed. This is no mere reward. It is real, undeniable infrastructure. He reads the description twice, a slow laugh building in his chest. The clueless seller thought he had dumped a failing slaughterhouse on some desperate idiot. Instead, he handed him a literal god machine tucked away in the basement. The plaza gave him a mythic egg, but this place offers daily growth. He no longer needs to beg public altars for permission to survive. True power does not want witnesses. It works best in the dark. He pulls a cracked bronze charm out of his pocket vault. His skill identifies it as a weak, temporary, completely useless item. Just the kind of trash a stronger hunter would discard without thinking. But it is perfect, exactly what this blood crown altar wants to eat. He drops the bronze charm inside as glowing red teeth snap shut. The trashy item burns up, and a strange glass bottle rises up. Stoppered with black wax, it holds a thick, almost living crimson fluid. This is core blood, a resource that grants permanent physical strengthening. It accelerates recovery, the only catch, extreme pain. He looks at the warning and he has zero hesitation. He is still weak, too weak to survive another hunter without cheating. Fine, he mutters, hurt me. He drinks the entire bottle. It hits his stomach like a burning furnace falling down a shaft. He collapses hard onto one knee, biting his tongue in sheer agony. Blood fills his mouth as every single bone rewrites itself like a weapon. Searing heat floods his muscles, instantly burning away all his deep exhaustion. The painful bruises from the previous hunters attack Titan and completely vanish. He stands up, the heavy hatchet in his hand feels weightless. Time itself seems slower, and his heart beats with eerie calmness. He grips a heavy steel chain hanging from above and pulls hard. The thick links groan and rip free without straining his shoulder. Yesterday, that massive chain would have easily owned him, not anymore. Now he tests himself by dragging a sharp blade across his palm. Crimson blood wells up, but the fresh cut immediately squeezes itself shut. It leaves only a warm itch. This power is finally his. Upstairs, a massive side of beef hangs heavily in the dark room. He approaches the thick meat, needing physical proof of his transformation. Meanwhile, the nervous seller has quietly followed him back inside. He hovers near the office door, making excuses about forgotten paperwork. Really, he is just checking if the buyer panicked and fled. The seller nervously asks what he is doing as he squares up. Just inventory, he answers calmly. Then, he unleashes a brutal punch. The massive carcass tears off the hook and crashes into a steel door. The seller's face goes pale, staring from the broken hook to the protagonist's hand, and finally the keys. He had just handed over. The guy mutters that he is not asking, and our hero calls him smart. He backs out of Northcut Meats without asking for the keys back. That sheer panic was worth everything. Almost as much as his raw strength, the first person to see this upgraded version of him chose. Silence without even being threatened. Fear might be crude, but it was still a solid safety net. As a personal security system, by the office door, the trembling seller gulps and holds up one. Last paperwork with trembling hands, asking for a final signature, our main character. Signs right where he points, no speeches, no celebration. The paper itself was completely boring. The keys in his pocket were not. He is gone, fast. Our guy cleans up the mess, locks the office, and carries that legendary Abyss Drake egg straight to the basement. The egg pulses harder the closer it gets to the blood crown altar, crimson veins. On its shell flare up with a massive hunger, our guy pours a bucket of ordinary blood into the drain. The altar drinks it up greedily, and thus egg absorbs a little warmth, releasing a small, annoyed pulse. His true sight confirms that progress is basically zero. Pointing at the shell, he warns that they need to talk about their tight budget. The egg just rolls half an inch closer to the altar. Like it owns the place. Honestly, maybe it does. Suddenly, Northcut Meats has become three different things. It is now a failed shop, a secret altar room, and a secret dragon nursery. This is a massive win, but it comes with a terrifying appetite. Just one junk charm had created a single bottle of core blood, and that bottle turned his fragile body from prey into something that can snap a heavy steel hook. This means every discarded reward in Fair Lake City is no longer garbage. It is now pure blood. Limitless strength, healing, and time, while others out there chase red beams and bragging about rare items. He only wants what they throw away. The major problem is scale. Right now he has Northcut Meats, the active altar, one mythic egg, 2/4x stubs, the pocket vault, a few cheap rewards, and an upgraded body that finally stopped feeling so weak. But he has no supply chain. He does not have nearly enough blood, nor a secure way to buy cheap rewards without showing his face to every hungry hunter, federal agent, and crazed altar addict in Fair Lake City. Up on the streets, his phone buzzes with a fresh public alert. More dark altars have activated before the scheduled reset. The city is warning citizens to quickly report any glowing lights, stolen rewards, or the unauthorized slaughter of altar creatures. Unauthorized. Talk about a wicked smile. The old world is already trying to hand out permits for a game they do not even understand. Deep down in his basement, the blood crown altar opens its crimson teeth. Once more hungry for the next piece of junk, the Abyss Drake egg pulses beside it, waiting for fresh blood. And far beyond the butcher shop, wealthy gamblers, terrified workers, desperate parents, and silent predators are all about to produce the exact trash he needs to become far more than lucky. Following morning, he wakes up under the shop with a problem that smells worse than the slaughterhouse floor. One single trash charm had become a bottle of core blood. One bottle made him strong enough to punch hanging beef clean off a steel hook, and then the blood crown altar opens its crimson teeth once more, acting like a spoiled king demanding breakfast. He has a private god machine under his floor, legendary egg soaking nearby, and absolutely no steady trash to feed either of them. That was the real supply problem. Blood was easy to find in a meat plant, but altar-touched blood was not. dead hunters were not a viable business model. Ending every single night with a body and a prayer was not an option. He needed repeatable fuel, so when the morning altar refresh hit Fair Lake City, he left Northcutt with his hood pulled up and his pocket vault fully loaded. His new body hummed like a stolen engine. The city looked different today. Just one night of miracles and murder changed everything. Yesterday, crowds gathered around altars. Today, they kept their distance. Rich gamblers still showed up, though. They brought their watches and velvet boxes, but now with private security. The poor brought grocery bags, family photos, and half-broken tools. They had the desperate look of people realizing money was not the only language. TrueSight turned every altar into a locked mouth, and honestly, most were useless. One altar demanded the last tooth from a living liar. He passed on that. Another wanted the first breath stolen from a hospital room, an absolute hard pass. A third wanted a wedding ring, discarded before the divorce was even filed. He almost laughed. Lydia would have loved the drama if she could profit. He kept moving. Browsing was exactly how fools ended up getting eaten. They called it research, but it was just suicide. Then a scream echoed nearby. It was not human, too wet, too low, and far too hungry. People fled the intersection near a grocery warehouse as a creature crawled over a truck. It looked like raw meat that had somehow learned anger, muscle strips dragged behind. Its mouth opened sideways. Every time someone threw meat from the dock, it shrieked. It was as if the actual concept of raw meat offended the thing. Meat-hating calamity. Talk about a weird sense of humor from the universe. He stopped at the very edge of the crowd, not because he wanted to help. 3 black federal trucks slammed into the curb at the exact same moment. Doors swung open before the tires even stopped smoking. Pharaoh had arrived. The Federal Anomalies Response Office did not move like some mall security team. There was no shouting for calm, and no one asked the monster to cooperate. Shield carriers went first, quickly pinning the creature down. They used hooked cables, while a third fired a flare into its mouth. As the calamity reared back, a woman in a gray field jacket stepped forward. She stepped through the spray of black blood, cutting its head clean off. They were built for small nightmares back before people even knew the name. Now they were trying to fight a massive citywide crisis with tiny teams. The crowd cheered like they were watching sports, but he did not cheer. He simply counted: 5 responders, 4 tools, 2 distractions, and 1 finisher. They were not stronger than mythic luck, but they beat lone idiots. That bothered him. His core blood body could break hooks and heal cuts quickly. But it could not match 5 highly trained people with coordinated gear. If a team like that found his basement, his easy days were over. The woman in the gray jacket wiped black blood off her cheek. A name strip on her chest read Agent Ivy Dalton. She looked around. Her gaze swept the crowd, locking directly onto him as cheering faded. Agent Ivy Dalton tilted her head slightly, as if she recognized him. She caught a sound nobody else heard. The responder beside her asked, "Agent Dalton?" She kept her eyes on the crowd, saying there was another signal nearby. Here, that realization hit him harder than any monster. He had not used an altar in front of her, nor had he opened his pocket vault. The Abyss Drake egg was still hidden. The Blood Crown altar lay under concrete across town, yet she had still almost sensed the corruption on him. He slipped behind a panicked man carrying a grocery basket, letting him block her view, and walked away at a perfectly normal pace. Running was a confession, staring back was just ego, and he had enough problems. Without inviting federal attention, behind him, Agent Ivy Dalton ordered the crowd back from the dead beast. He kept his hands in his pockets, smiling. At the ground, government teams had coordination. He needed control. The altar that gave him the first half of his answer sat outside a closed charity shop, half buried under winter coats people had discarded during the panic. It was small, narrow, and ugly, looking like an old match stand with frozen stone hands carved around the offering slot. Nobody else cared because its surface glow was a weak, thin blue-white light, his absolute favorite kind. True sight activated, a hidden demand, a flame offered to the cold without bargaining. Human value was irrelevant. Match resonance, warmth without sale. Flame touched by severance, a reward trace providing daily hope fuel. He pulled out the same cheap lighter he had used on Lydia's photo strip. The lighter had cost less than a fast food meal, burning a fake relationship into a cheap stub. Watch how he turns this useless trash into pure treasure. Woman nearby saw him holding it and warned him people were offering jewelry. That cheap thing won't even get you a white glow. Good, he said, white glow is. Embarrassing, she backed away like poverty was contagious. He flicked the lighter once and held the flame to the frozen stone hands. The altar did not roar but sighed. The carved hands closed gently around the flame as if it was the first warm thing they had touched in years. Blue-white light sank into the stone, returning as pure gold. A matchbox slid out, plain cardboard, scuffed corners and a faded sun stamped on the front. True sight identified it before the crowd could laugh. Hope matchbox, epic grade with an effect that produces 5 hope matches daily. Each match carries clean despair to hope. Residue perfectly safe as offering fuel. The woman who mocked the lighter stared at the gold glow. For a lighter, she whispered. He picked up the box, saying no for paying attention. He left before anyone could ask what it did. The hope matchbox felt light in his palm all the way back to Northcutt, but the blood crown altar reacted before he even reached the final basement step. Red lines brightened along the floor as the crown-shaped mouth opened wide, recognizing food when it smelled it. He struck the first hope match. The flame was tiny, but the feeling inside it was not. For 1 second, he heard every pathetic little bargain people make with life. One more paycheck, one more day, one more chance not to be discarded. Then the blood crown altar swallowed the match, turning the sound into red liquid. A glass bottle rose from the altar, carrying core blood, not some weak drop, but a full safe bottle. He struck the second match, another bottle, third, fourth, and fifth. By the time the last flame disappeared, 5 bottles of core vials of dark red blood stood in a row on the stone, sealed tight with black wax. The matchbox rattled empty. Next refresh at dawn. He stared at that hope matchbox. Then he looked at the blood crown altar, calling it a greedy little masterpiece. That weak-looking matchbox had become 5 daily bottles of permanent physical growth. While rich gamblers fought over public red beams out in the open, he had just found passive income in a basement smelling of old blood. That was the kind of disrespect he loved. He drank 1 bottle, pain hit but less than before. His body knew the root now. Heat poured through his ribs, shoulders, hands, and spine. Every bruise from that bookstore fight vanished completely. His lungs opened wider, the room sharpened. He stored 3 bottles in his pocket vault and set one beside the abyssal drake egg. The egg pulsed once, tasting the bottle through its shell, giving him the supernatural equivalent of a bored blink. Asking if it was not good enough, it rolled away. Fine. The dragon wanted better blood, and he wanted better manners. Neither of them got everything that morning. The hope matchbox solved his physical growth problem, not the hatching problem. He still needed combat control. Agent Ivy Dalton had almost sensed him, while a dead calamity was cooling on the asphalt. The next professional might not just sense him. They might actually swing. The answer waited inside the 1 box he saved from his apartment before abandoning it. Not cash, not weapons, but his father's dusty old desk calendar. Daniel Keaton had marked everything in blocky black pen. Paydays, rent due dates, Thanksgiving, Mother Angela's birthday, old school appointments, the day he planned to fix his bike, and the day he never came home to do it. He did not keep the calendar because of its value. He kept it because grief makes cowards of objects. Keeping paper means he never has to admit the person is gone. That was the only reflection he allowed before turning it into fuel. The time altar waited inside a dead watch kiosk near the transit station. Tiny stone clock hands circled its surface, stopping and jerking forward like an anxious heartbeat. True sight read it cleanly. Hidden demand, a year honestly lost by someone trying to hold a family together. Reward, judgment time awareness, strongest resonance. Marking time lost to family duty. This altar did not want a luxury watch. It wanted proof that time had already taken something. He placed the calendar on the stone. For a second, his fingers would not let go. Then he recalled Troy's voice, reminding him that the altar demanded value. That helped. He let go. The calendar pages flipped. Rent, paycheck, birthday, hospital bill, Thanksgiving, missed dinner. The page with his father's final mark burned last, and the ash rose into a tight ring of gold. A pocket watch dropped into his hand. It was heavier than it looked, black metal with a red second hand that did not tick until his pulse matched it. True sight flashed. Fate watch, grade legendary, effect, reads immediate action rhythm, danger angle, and consequence timing, requires physical speed to obey what it shows, not future sight. Better, future sight tells weak men how they are about to die. Fate watch gave his stronger body a chance to move correctly. The proof came before he Reached the street, 3 desperate men had followed him into the dead kiosk. He spotted them in the glass reflection, just as the red second hand ticked half. A beat before their strike, one attacker raised a heavy pipe behind his head, fate watch. Revealed the angle, his body moved. The pipe sliced empty air where his head had just been. Slipping under the arm, he drove an elbow into ribs, seizing the pipe. Before his opponent could even scream, the second man lunged with a box cutter, fate watch. Pointed straight to his wrist, not the blade. He struck the wrist, sending the weapon clattering. The third thug saw his friends fold and made the smartest choice of his life. He bolted. He did not chase him. No point wasting precious breath on low-level rats. The man with the broken wrist gasped out, "What are you?" He crouched, swiped the cheap green charm from the pocket, letting true sight analyze. The item, low-grade heat charm, nearly spent. Total trash, but hey, beautiful recyclable trash. He thought he left them alive because fresh corpses always draw too much attention. Before rain and the blood crown altar did not need murder to make breakfast anymore. Back at Northcutt, that green charm dissolved into half a bottle of blood. Not impressive, but still profit. By sunset, his inventory had completely changed. Hope matchbox empty until dawn, then 5 more chances. The blood crown output was 5 safe bottles from Hope, with scraps when he earned them. Fate watch maintained his combat rhythm, another weak charm converted, but a federal agent had almost sensed his presence. That last detail mattered most. A massive payoff had landed, and the consequences arrived fast. His phone screen lit up with a shaky clip from the morning monster attack. Agent Ivy Dalton stood over the beheaded Calamity, turning away from the cheering crowd to stare directly toward the spot where he had just been. The caption read, "Pharaoh Energy Agent notices second anomaly near the grocery attack." He deleted the clip, but those eyes would definitely haunt him. Then a black flare rose beyond the rail line. West Rail District, gunshots echoed a desperate scream. Then a pink glow pulsed through the rainy dusk. Like a dangerous invitation, his blood crown altar had given him daily growth. Fate watch had given him control. Now the city wanted him to test both. Against people who do not run after a single broken wrist, he followed the noise into the West Rail District because a smart man avoids gunfire and a greedy one asks what everyone is shooting over. By then, he had stopped pretending to be just one of those things. The district used to be old warehouses, rail spurs, and empty loading yards, but after the altars fell, it became the kind of place where desperate folks came at night and criminals arrived 5 minutes earlier. That pink glow came from a fenced yard behind a collapsed freight depot. Men wearing black bands had surrounded it. Nightfall Syndicate. He knew the name because criminals are never subtle when they want civilians. Terrified, someone had spray-painted the name on the gate in silver, and 2 men laughed right beneath it, while a third dragged a bleeding rival across the gravel. In the center of the yard stood a pink altar shaped like a throne, made of folded hands. The glow around it was soft, warm, and completely wrong for all the blood on the ground. Near the altar, a woman in a black coat stood. With one hand pressed to her side, a thug pointed a pistol at her, saying, "Mara Sable, commander or not, you do not get this altar alone." That answered 3 questions at once: her name, her status, and the reality that nightfall. In this syndicate, promotions are settled with bullets. Mara Sable smiles at her men. Her look is not warm, it is the cold grin of a sharpened blade. She warns them that they brought rivals into her yard, and everyone heard her. So she brought something hungry, slicing her palm on a rusty spike. Blood is flung at the dark, offering slot next to the pink altar. Our main character's true sight spots a chilling notification just before the slot seals. The system accepts a calamity release. He barely ducks behind a rusted loader. Suddenly, the ground splits open. A faceless black nightmare climbs out with 6 arms. It is a mess of wet ribs and hooked claws, instantly lunging forward. The first thug folds backward like snapped wood before he can even scream. Rival gang members open fire, but the monster just shrugs off the lead. Then it tears them apart. Mara does not run, she just watches them die. She has the terrifying calm of a boss counting expenses. Talk about absolute ruthlessness. In that instant, he realizes she is no victim. She knew what this meant. It would butcher everyone nearby, whether they were allies, enemies, or innocent bystanders. They were all just human shields to her. One wounded thug crawls forward. His leg is broken. He begs his boss for help, but she only stares. For a brief moment, it looks like she might actually spare him. Instead, she grabs his collar and slices his palm open with a knife. She smears his fresh blood across the gravel, painting a deadly target line. The beast instantly turns toward the scent. The bleeding man realizes his fate. He gasps out her name, but she simply lets him go. Screaming, the man is dragged directly into its dark, hollow chest. Mara uses the distraction to walk toward the pink altar. This is a true psychopath. This is exactly the kind of ruthless villain our protagonist prefers to face early on. She is just a predator showing her true colors. He hates useless waste. He respects cold efficiency, and more than anything, he wants that altar. His fate watch clicks in his mind. The red timer displays the monster's reach. It calculates Mara's firing angle, the physical gaps, and his exact path. He needs 3 precise steps to avoid getting shredded. He makes his move. Mara spots him halfway, her eyes narrow, calling out that he is in the wrong yard. He retorts that she has the wrong monster. The beast swings a hooked arm. Fate Watch predicts the movement. He ducks under the strike, aiming a pipe. He jams the pipe directly into its arm joint, tearing through thick black muscle. It screeches good, it can feel pain. Suddenly, Mara fires at his back. His vision flashes with the bullet's trajectory. He twists his body away. The round tears his sleeve instead of his spine. He turns to face her. Mara's smug smile vanishes, replaced by cold calculation. She demands to know his identity. He simply replies that he is busy, kicking a fallen gun out of reach. Rushing forward, he finds Mara counters smoothly, clearly used to surviving worse ambushes. She hurls a knife low at his thigh, instantly aiming her gun at his face. The system shows him both threats, but his physical speed has its limits. A blade slashes his leg, but his core blood immediately burns it shut. Mara watches the wound instantly heal. Her expression grows even colder. He grabs her wrist before she can fire again, slamming her arm down. Altar's stone base, bone cracks, the gun falls. For one clean second, he has her. Then her body bursts into blood mist, not smoke, and definitely not a trick of the rain but real blood. It sprays through his fingers, hot and fine, then gathers 10 yards away behind the broken freight car. Mara reforms on one knee, looking deathly pale. Now her broken wrist hanging wrong. True sight flickers too late to stop. It a temporary escape art with a heavy blood cost. Mara looks at him from across the yard. True fear shows in her face, but she does not beg or threaten. She does something far more annoying. She escapes, the blood mist rips backward through a drainage grate and vanishes beneath the rail line. He could have chased her, but the calamity chooses this exact moment to grab his shoulder. Bad timing for him, but worse timing for the monster. Its claws punch through his jacket and fine skin, core blood seals the first tear, but the second cut goes much deeper. Pain flashes white down his arm. Fate Watch shows him 3 clean exits, and every single one leaves the egg's dinner behind, so he picks the ugly 4th option and steps straight into the grip instead of away, jamming his thumb into a soft seam under the creature's wrist. It is not a vital point, it is a question. The calamity answers by loosening one claw. Enough. He jams the iron pipe right through one of its arm joints, letting Fate Watch guide him through the rhythm of its weight. It pulls. He steps with the force instead of fighting it, ripping the pipe sideways and tearing the joint completely open. Black blood splashes heavily across his chest. Inside his pocket vault, the abyss strike egg pulses hard and hungry. Fine, he tells it, dinner first. He drops the egg onto the gravel, its obsidian shell, hitting the ground just as the calamity lunges again. The egg does not hatch, it drinks. Every line of black blood pooling on the ground twists violently toward it. Calamity blood. Blood from Nightfall thugs, rivals, and even the trail left by Mara's escape. Or at least what little of it has not burned away. The shell veins bright. The monster freezes for half a second, seemingly offended that something smaller is now the center of appetite. He uses that window to climb onto the loader, jumping down with both hands around the pipe to drive it straight through the smooth, blank face where its features should be. The pipe snaps. The calamity breaks too, collapsing into wet, black ribbons that crawl directly toward the egg instead of away from it. The shell drinks greedily until the yard smells less like blood and more like hot iron. True sight flashes over the egg. Hatching progress increased significantly from the calamity. Blood, though absorption is still incomplete. The egg gives a pleased pulse. Do not get smug, he tells it. You still look like a cursed football. The pink altar brightens behind him. Right, time for the actual prize. Most of the men yard are dead, running, or pretending very hard to be dead. The ones still breathing watch him with the intense dread people, usually reserved for raging fires. Loaded weapons or relentless debt collectors. One Nightfall thug crawls backward on his elbows, and warns that Mara will remember his face. He looks down at him. She can remember the part where she ran, he replies, his mouth snaps shut, a valuable reaction since fear saves time. He steps to the pink altar and lets true sight read it. It demands a sensation strong enough to wake a board. Pleasure Queen, human value, jewelry, and flattery are rejected, the best match. Nearby is extra strength menthol rub for a cold body shock, reward trace. A wish avatar, he stares at the glowing text. The medical pouch he swiped from Northcut, inside is a jar of extra strength menthol rub, used by overworked workers who lifted heavy meat and lied about their backs. It smells like winter violence, he laughs. Once not out of maturity, but because the system is asking him to. Seduce a pleasure queen with muscle rub, he opens the jar, the wounded nightfall. Thug whispers, is he serious? Very, he replies, scooping up a thick glob of rub and slapping it onto the altar, a pink glow. Flares, warm air rolls, the blood smell vanishes under. Sweetness and freezing fire, a woman's shape forms above the altar, tall, beautiful, and unreal, with long light hair and eyes that look like they have watched kingdoms ruin themselves for fun. The surviving thugs stare like their brains left their skulls. Even he has to admit this reward knows its target audience. True sight labels the forming figure as a wish avatar. Unstable potential, high stimulation match, he crosses his arms. Finally a reward with actual manners, but then the egg launches. Like a cannonball hitting the pink avatar in the chest, she opens her mouth in royal outrage, then the egg just eats her. No ceremony. No romance and no thank you. The pink light vanishes inside the shell. Instantly the yard goes quiet. He stares, the egg pulses, true sight. Updates, hatching progress surges, and a heart-tail trademark is acquired. Future companion influence is altered. A tiny red-pink mark curls across the shell like a heart-tail. He points his finger at it, you. Oh, Mia wife, the egg pulses again, totally shameless, which is just classic. Worst part, it has all his greed and none of his bills. A pink spark did not disappear completely. It sinks in and curls right under the surface, chasing the red veins in a slow circle. The egg looks less like a monster and more like something with real personality. That makes things worse. Weapons are simple, but pets are expensive. This mythic unborn companion with a taste for luxury rewards is going to ruin his budget and his dignity together. Still, he stores it carefully. He is greedy, not stupid. The surviving nightfall thug makes a strangled sound that might have been laughter or trauma. He decides to let him live, let him crawl back and tell Mara Sable that a stranger wounded her, killed her, released. Calamity stole the pink altar reward and then got robbed by his own egg. Humiliation travels faster when enemies deliver it for free. He puts the egg back inside his pocket vault. The heart-tail mark stays visible in his mind, pulsing beside the hatching progress. The main payoff has landed safely. Before the next crisis hits, this egg is no longer just hungry, it is developing traits. The future beast inside has eaten blood, calamity essence, and a pleasure queen avatar like a spoiled kid cleaning out a buffet. Then gray rain begins to fall, hissing against the black blood. The pink altar flickers. The wounded thug who laughed reaches for a green bracelet on his wrist. A faint shield starts to form around him. Then the gray rain touches the bracelet. The shield dies. Panic fills the thug's face, his own body. He did not weaken. Core blood still burned warm in his muscles. Fate watch still ticked in his pulse. The blood crown growth was permanent. The bracelet's borrowed trick was not. His phone buzzed once. A public post flashed across the emergency feed before vanishing. Temporary reward powers fail. In gray rain, do not go outside if your strength is borrowed. Deleted, too late. He had seen enough. At the time he did not know every limit of the rain. He knew the one that mattered. Mara Sable had escaped by blood mist. Blood mist was a temporary trick with a cost, and if gray rain could turn borrowed shields into wet jewelry, then the woman who had slipped through his fingers was not immortal. She was weather dependent. He stood in the yard while the rain erased blood bodies in the pink altar's glow. The dead men vanished first, then the calamity ribbons, then the footprints. The surviving thug crawled through the gate before the rain could decide whether witnesses counted as stains. He let him go. Some messages were better delivered terrified. By dawn, Nightfall Syndicate would know Mara had lost men, blood, and face in her own yard. Pharaoh would see another abnormal fight erased by gray rain, and he would be hunting on nights when borrowed power turned off. The city Thought gray rain was cleanup. For him, it had just become hunting weather. If rain shut down borrowed power, then rainy nights belonged to him. That was the thought that pulled him back into the streets before the gray clouds had finished choking Fair Lake City. Not courage, not justice, math. Mara Sable had escaped him because her blood mist was faster than his hands, the wounded. Nightfall Thug's shield had died the moment gray rain touched it, his core. Blood body stayed warm, Fate Watch stayed awake, the pocket vault stayed open in his mind. Permanent strength survived the rain, borrowed tricks got washed, so he went hunting. The first proof came before the bridge, two black band collectors had cornered a delivery driver under a gas station awning. One collector held a little red charm between his fingers and kept telling the driver to hand over his reward pouch. Rain does not touch us, the collector said. That was a brave sentence from a man standing 6 inches from water. He crushed the charm. A red smoke blade formed in his hand for half a second, then gray rain blew sideways under the awning and touched it. The blade died. The collector stared at his empty fist. The driver stared too. Talk about a bad day. He stepped up and broke the collector's wrist. His partner turned, reached for a green flash charm, and watched that one sputter out before it left his palm. Fate Watch showed him his knee. Core blood supplied the rest. Both men hit the wet concrete. The delivery driver whispered, "Are you Pharaoh?" "Worse for them," he said. He took the dead red charm and the sputtered green one. Low-grade, temporary, nearly ruined. Rain perfect blood-crowned scraps if they survived the pocket vault. The driver ran without asking his name. Good. Names were expensive. He did not find Mara. What he found was worse for his sleep and better for his inventory. Under a rail bridge at the edge of West Rail District, 2 altars faced each other. Across a flooded service road, the left altar glowed black-red behind a carving of a proud bird with broken wings. The right altar sat cracked down the middle. A stone surface carved like a kneeling figure, with one hand gripping a buried blade. No crowd, no cops, no nightfall muscle, just freezing rain and 2 hungry altars waiting for some idiot stupid enough to actually read the script. Luckily, our guy is always down. True sight flares over the left altar. First, the condition is harsh. A chosen phoenix must slay the broken heir before his return. The reward is a dark vengeance vessel, but backlash risk is extreme. The right altar answers just a heartbeat later. The broken heir must face absolute contempt and choose blood over begging. The reward is a red weapon seed, best offering, words of ultimate abandonment. He stares at the 2 altars and lets out a soft laugh. Talk about a cliché. Revenge drama set up right under a bridge. We have a proud, chosen woman. Broken man, brutal rejection, a comeback weapon, and dark backlash. He has seen enough trashy stories to know how this goes. Rule 1, never underestimate the fall heir. Rule 2, never dump the quiet guy before his massive awakening. And never mock the kneeling guy in Act 1, but he does not have to be that pathetic broken heir. He just needs to orchestrate this for maximum profit. He pulls out 2 blank receipts from his inventory space and starts writing. Using the fresh blood dripping from his cut knuckle, on the first slip he writes, "Cut him loose before his weakness becomes yours." On the second, he scrawls, "Stop begging and let the blade answer." The words look almost silly in the downpour. Then both altars suddenly inhale. A shadow woman forms over the left altar in red light, cruel and gorgeous. Blazing bird, the right altar conjures a kneeling shadow man with shattered hands and a face hidden behind wet hair. They are just empty rolls. Perfect. He much prefers exploiting a script over stealing from a genuinely desperate guy. His moral standards are pretty low, but they exist when convenient. The red crown shadow woman reads his first note. Her face twists in sheer contempt. She steps toward the kneeling figure, her voice making the heavy rain tremble. "You will always wait," she sneers. The kneeling shadow man reads the second slip. No more shaking. The left altar flares pitch black. The right flares red, both lights shooting straight into the sky. Stealth is ruined. Suddenly, the red altar cracks open, a black dagger rising from the stone slot. Its edge razor-thin and its core burning blood red. The shadow man's hand reaches out, but our guy reacts faster and steals the weapon. The instant his fingers grip the hilt, the kneeling shadow crumbles into ash, as if his sole purpose was to manifest the blade and get rejected. Fierce red light flows into the blade. True sight reveals its name, Soul. Dagger, mythic grade, cuts soul residue and feeds on absolute terror and rage, growing stronger with every single kill while resisting mental corruption. That is all he has time to read, the black altar screams. The red-crowned shadow woman splits open from throat to stomach as something crawls. Out it towers over the bridge, wearing her face in pure contempt like skin. A massive vengeance wraith, it glares at the empty hand where the weapon should be. Then locks eyes with him, hissing the word thief, the role he manipulated. Finally notices the intruder outside its script. That means the incoming backlash. It was not random anymore. The soul dagger had picked him. He raised it. The wraith crossed the road without moving its legs. His fate watch screamed. It screamed, not ticked, absolutely screamed. The red second hand split into 3 possible fatal paths: a claw through chest, teeth through throat, black wing through spine. His new weapon had come with a massive boss fight attached. That was fair. Annoying but fair. The freezing rain did not weaken the wraith. That was the first bad sign. Gray water ran right through its body, coming out pitch black, as if the thing was staining the water instead of being washed by it. Temporary tricks died in. The rain obsession apparently had much better waterproofing, so his easy plan died. No waiting for the storm to solve it, no lazy god routine. If he wanted that soul dagger, he had to earn it the stupid way. He ducked under the first claw. The wraith's fingers carved 4 lines in the concrete behind him. He slashed its arm viciously with the soul dagger. The blade sliced through black flesh and dragged out pale sparks. The wraith recoiled. It could be hurt, then. It smiled. The sparks twisted into whispers. Lydia's voice, Troy's laugh. His father's last marked calendar page, his mother's name spoken in a hospital hallway he definitely did not want to remember. Every shameful, useful wound inside him tried to stand up at once. A mental attack. That explained why the dagger mattered. The wraith was not trying to kill his body first. It was trying to make his mind kneel. He bit his tongue until he tasted blood and drove core heat through his chest. Ron Alter, he said through his teeth. He already burned his begging phase. He lunged. The soul dagger cut through the whisper cloud and the voices snapped off like strings. The blade drank the resentment, not his, hers. The wraith's, the whole ugly script. For one breath he felt the dagger become heavier and sharper at the same time. Then the wraith hit him with the bridge. Well, not the whole bridge, obviously. It ripped a chunk of concrete railing loose with one wing and hurled it into his ribs. Fate watch warned him half a beat early. His body moved, but not enough. The concrete clipped his side and threw him straight into the flooded road. Something cracked. Core blood burned immediately. But healing pain is still pain. His breath left like it had received better job offers. The wraith drifted above him, calling him immortal. It mocked that he stirred a tragedy and thought he owned the ending. He coughed blood into the rain. No, he spat. He thought the ending might be sharp. It drove a claw down. He rolled, pulling 1/4 act stub from his pocket vault and slapped it against the wraith's wrist. The blue ticket burned in the gray rain. For a second he was terrified the rain would wash the ticket dead too. It did not. The 4th act stub was not borrowed power from a charm. It was an altar reward already bound through use, and the rain hated loose tricks more than its own tools. That distinction went straight into his survival ledger. For a human, the stub gave 3 seconds. For a thing made of obsession, it gave less than 1, but less than 1 was not nothing. The wraith froze with its claw an inch from his face. Its stolen eyes widened. The red-crowned woman's utter contempt cracked, and behind it flashed the broken moment that had made the wraith possible, a role abandoning another role, realizing too late that cruelty had become a cage. He did not hesitate. He stabbed the tragedy. The soul dagger sank straight into the wraith's palm, up the arm, and directly into its chest. The blade did not bone resisted. Only a knot of dark light twisted around a crimson spark. His fate watch showed the timing. Twist now or die. He twisted. The wraith screamed so hard every single puddle under the bridge leaped. Dark light poured greedily into the blade. The crimson spark fought, flickered, and then snapped inside the weapon too. The wraith's face shifted from a proud crown queen to something far younger, uglier and terrified. Then the soul dagger devoured it. Pure silence instantly fell over the bridge. First, the black altar cracked. Its proud bird carving collapsed inward like wet paper. The red altar collapsed next, its kneeling stone figure dissolving right then and there because the mythical weapon had chosen a master. He lay in the flooded road, broken ribs slowly knitting back together. The mythic dagger buzzed in his palm, clearly loving the meal. Its massive meal, true sight updated, soul dagger bound, growth active. Active consumed will, wraith fragment, mental resistance unlocked. He laughed, once immediately regretting it as his ribs flared in pain. Power was power. He had stirred the pot only because a mythic weapon was waiting at the bottom. That did not make those claw marks feel any less painful. It just made them expensive. He forced his broken body up, leaning heavily against the concrete wall as rain washed away. The black residue, the soul dagger, slipped back into his pocket vault, although put away he could still feel it waiting, hungry in a cleaner, colder way than. His egg, the ravenous abyss drake egg, pulsed with jealousy, incredibly annoyed that the dagger had eaten its meal first. Do not start, he muttered quietly. The egg pulsed in protest. His inventory was basically a family argument made of monsters, then tires. Hissed through wet asphalt at the far end of the road. He pulled his hood down and immediately vanished into the dark shadows beneath the bridge structure. 2 vehicles stopped past. Ruined guardrail, federal lights, no sirens. Pharaoh had learned not to announce arrivals since the gray rain started dissolving all their evidence. On the opposite side, 3 figures in dark coats slipped through the rail cars. Black bands wrapped their arms. Nightfall Syndicate scouts, perhaps. Both powerful factions had arrived for that same strange energy signature, but neither side saw his face. That was crucial. Agent Ivy Dalton had nearly detected him in broad daylight. Mara Sable had seen enough of him to be absolutely terrified. Nightfall had their own witness babbling about the Pink Altar incident, and now both factions stood on opposite ends of the bridge where he had just stolen a mythic weapon right out of their hands. The residual energy was gone, but the consequences remained. A Pharaoh responder swept a scanner across the asphalt, reporting a residual signal matching the plaza. Hearing this, one of the Nightfall scouts instantly froze. He watched them from the dark, one hand pressing against his cracked ribs, the other near his pocket. Vault, getting out of there was the smart play. Listening longer, just pure greed. For once he chose the smart path, sliding down the drainage route before they reached the shattered altars. The steady gray rain washed his tracks clean, but the larger pattern remained: the hot chips, the gold cube, the blood crown, and now this dark bridge. Too many high-stakes events were beginning to revolve around one mysterious individual. By the time he reached Northcut Meats, his mythic soul dagger was bound. His ribs were mostly healed, and his 1/4 act stub was gone. He had gained the weapon he needed for. They were monsters that attacked the mind, fed on fear, and refused to stay flesh. But that soul dagger was his. Now the search was tightening. Pharaoh was no longer chasing mere rumors from the Crown Mall Plaza. Nightfall stopped hunting just any stranger. He had embarrassed Mara Sable. Both sides watched the city light up red and black over the same district. In the same rain, following the exact same trail of dead altars. He locked the Northcut basement behind him, setting the soul dagger on the altar. It did not eat, only bowing its red teeth as if it knew. Even this private machine knew the dagger was no trash. To him it felt like an answer. Outside, gray rain tapped the roof. Inside, the egg pulsed, the dagger hummed, and the city kept searching. They wanted the man who made their rich offerings look completely foolish. He was the one making dangerous lights appear in the wrong places. The next people to circle him would not be random hunters. They would come with heavy uniforms, black bands, and old grudges. By sunset, the entire plaza had learned to fear those bright lights. But desperate crowds lined up anyway. He returned with his hood pulled low, the soul dagger hidden, and his hands still sore from the Wraith fight. Pharaoh vans rolled past twice without sirens. Nightfall Syndicate men watched. They stood by the food court entrance, black bands around their sleeves. Nightfall was not born from altars. They had been selling debt and fear. For years, they sold dirty loyalty. This new world just gave them power. Register, and guess what? Both sides wanted the exact same guy. Neither expected him to be buying cheap noodles 20 feet away. The plaza looked even worse than the day he embarrassed those rich gamblers. People had stopped laughing at poor offerings. Now they did something worse. They laughed at poor people. A man in a winter coat stood waiting. He held a gold wedding ring, a hospital bracelet on his wrist. 2 Nightfall thugs stood right beside him like casino security. One thug snapped slot fee first. The man looked at his ring. He pleaded it was all he had. The thug just smirked. Told him it better pull something good. The man fed the ring inside. Green light flickered, coughed, and spat out a tooth-sized crack charm. He grabbed it. Like it was medicine, the thug snatched it before his fingers closed. House cut, the thug sneered. The man begged loud enough for everyone to hear. His wife was in the hospital. Just let him keep it. The second thug shoved him to the ground. You only paid to spin. You did not pay to keep the machine. That was their whole business. They found people with no choices, gave them one more awful option. Then charged rent on the miracle. He was deciding whether those two thugs were worth a public scene when a black Maybach rolled up. Old grudges always have terrible timing. Troy Bancroft stepped out first, looking very clean. He wore polished shoes and that same arrogant expression from before. The day he tried buying his dragon egg, Lydia Wren followed behind him. She wore bright red lipstick and fake calm, then she froze seeing him. She fixed it for Miles. That tiny crack was almost worth the trip alone. Lydia called out for Miles, her loud voice instantly drawing a crowd. Troy looked Miles up and down, staring right at his very plain jacket. He looked at the food tray, asking if Miles really returned to La Plaza, calling it either brave or pathetic, while Miles quietly took a bite of noodles. Her smile tightened, asking if he was still playing superior. He just said no. He was just eating. It got a few nervous laughs from the crowd. Nobody knew if they should laugh. Lydia absolutely hated that. She hated losing control. Instantly, she raised her hand. 4 private guards stepped out, 2 of them wearing special black bands. Under their coat cuffs, it was all borrowed danger and cheap confidence. Troy noticed his gaze, smiling and saying the city changed and adapted. Rented bracelets from criminals, Miles scoffed. Inspirational, Miles noted. Lydia stepped closer as a green shimmer crawled over the charm at her throat, a cheap luck glow to make men stumble. It slid over Miles but failed to find a single place to bite, his core. Blood burned under his skin, while the soul dagger hummed in his pocket. It wanted permission, but he refused. Lydia wasn't worth it. Not yet. Lydia stopped close enough for him to. He could smell her expensive perfume mixed with sweet panic. She brought up his good day with an altar, warning him not to mistake luck. For actual success, Troy then pulled a thick cash envelope out. Holding it between 2 fingers, Lydia pointed her sharp red heel toward the ground, demanding he kneel, kiss her shoe, and tell everyone he was just lucky. Only then would she pay him off. To stop embarrassing himself, the plaza going dead silent in anticipation. These people had seen altars devour gold and monsters crawl out of alleys. They watched federal agents sweep the streets, but nothing beats public humiliation. It was an appetite Lydia knew exactly how to satisfy. She had fed them with his name for months. Troy lifted the envelope. He taunted him, calling it more money than Miles could make in a whole year. Miles stared at it. Then he looked at Lydia's shoe, before handing his noodles to a nearby man. He told him to hold the tray. The poor guy just blinked in confusion. Taking the food, Lydia laughed, asking if he was trying to be dramatic. Suddenly, Miles moved. A massive slap landed before her guards could even react. There was nothing elegant or symbolic about it. It was just pure payback. The clean, ugly sound of unpaid rent, fake emergencies, and designer bags. Getting paid back with interest all at once, Lydia collapsed onto the pavement. Her high heels snapped completely off, bouncing right under Troy's expensive car. The cash envelope burst in Troy's hand, scattering bills all over the place. It looked as if his shattered dignity was trying to escape. For one long second, nobody moved. Lydia touched her cheek and stared at her bloody fingers. She whispered in shock. Miles calmly took his noodles back from the man. He said he was improving the offer. She keeps the cash, he keeps his peace. The first guard swung a heavy baton right at his face. Fate watch ticked in his head. He stepped inside the swing, catching the guard's wrist, driving his elbow into the ribs. Core blood made the sound. Heavier than it should have been, the guard folded, sliding across the pavement. Until he hit the green altar steps, the second guard lunged for his throat. But he grabbed his belt and collar, hoisting him up and throwing him into the other guard. They crashed through a plastic display of bottled drinks as soda exploded. Over nightfall black bands, the fourth guard was smarter, pulling a thin green charm from his sleeve and crushing it. Wind snapped violently around him, his body blurring forward, knife aimed at his stomach, borrowed speed, temporary. Charm, the plaza saw a streak, but he saw a late payment. Fate watch showed his path. His left hand caught the knife wrist, while his right slapped the side of his face. So hard the borrowed wind died mid-step. He spun once, hitting the pavement, and stayed there with his cheek pressed against a $5 bill. The green altar's ruined offerer stared at him, holding his steaming noodles in his hands. The nightfall thug who had stolen his cracked charm took one step back. He just stared at him. The thug dropped the charm on the ground. Smart, he muttered. The ruined man grabbed it and ran before anyone changed their mind. That was a useful reaction. Fear had just returned one. Stolen miracle. Lydia tried to stand, but her broken heel betrayed her first. Troy reached for her, then stopped when he looked at his hand. You cannot do this, Troy warned. He kicked the cash envelope toward him. Buy a better sentence. His mouth shut. Lydia's eyes shook. Between rage and disbelief, wanting the crowd to rush to her side, she wanted somebody to call him a monster. She wanted the old plaza where beauty and money decided who deserved sympathy. The crowd gave her nothing, the same. People who had laughed at his hot chips now stared at the fallen guards. And the cash under Troy's shoes. Public status is cruel. It never really loves you, does it? It only rents itself to whoever looks strongest in the moment. Lydia learned that on the concrete. One nightfall thug near the green altar muttered, "Is he the one from the yard?" He heard it, and so did Lydia. Her face sharpened with a new kind of hope. She did not know what he had done to Mara Sable's crew. She only heard that Nightfall already had a reason to hate him, and she was the kind of woman who treated other people's grudges like a ladder. You think this ends here? Lydia spat. No, he replied, you have always been bad at ending things. He left before the plaza could decide whether to applaud or call someone with heavier weapons. The food stalls behind the mall were still open because the end of the world had not killed appetite. It had only made everyone eat faster. That was where he found Ray Navarro standing beside a folding table with a blue porcelain cup on a stained towel, stack of hospital receipts under one elbow, and the face of a man who had already sold his pride and found out pride has bad resale value. A vendor across from him laughed. Nobody wants your grandma's cup, Ray. If it was altar touched, it would glow. Ray kept his voice steady. It was found beside an altar after gray rain. Then it is wet trash, the vendor sneered. Ray's hand tightened around the receipts. He stopped walking. True sight. A window popped up. The still water cup, legendary grade. Its function storing gray rain without decay. Spilling it suppressed any borrowed, temporary, or unstable abilities nearby, but the splash range was brief. Bad timing turned a legendary cup into wet clay. His noodles suddenly became far less interesting. The cup looked useless. Blue glaze, hairline crack, no glow, no carved dragon, no dramatic smoke. Something rich gamblers would step over while chasing red pillars. Perfect. Ray saw him staring and straightened. If you are here to mock me too, make it quick. How much do you need? He asked. He did not name a price, which told him more than any sales pitch. Ray looked down at his top receipt. My daughter, Ruby, needs another payment before morning. 28,000 gets her through the week. More if the hospital changes its mind. His voice did not break, but his hands did. The vendor snorted. You hear that? He thinks a teacup is worth hospital money. He placed a cash stack down. That shut the vendor up instantly. Ray stared at the money. That is too much. No, he replied, it is not enough. The cup is worth more than your whole street. His eyes flicked to it. Good. He was desperate, not stupid. He leaned closer so only Ray heard him. Heart, you want Ruby's bills paid? Then listen once. People are throwing away bad altar rewards because they do not know what trash is worth. You buy them quietly. Cracked charms, failed items, ugly trinkets, anything the altar touched. Do not ask why and do not say his name. Bring them to the drop. He provides and your daughter keeps getting paid. Ray looked at the cash, then at the cup, then at him. That sounds like a leash, Ray said. It is, he said. The difference is he pays before he pulls. Ray almost smiled. It died before it reached his eyes, and if Nightfall asks, he said, that question was better than loyalty. It meant he had already seen the teeth. Then you listen, he replied. You tell him what they want, and you never pretend they are your friends. Ray slid the cup toward him. My daughter first. Your daughter first, he replied. The words changed his posture. Not trust. Trust would have been stupid after just one conversation in an alley behind a mall, but his shoulders stopped curling inward, as if he expected the whole street to kick him again. The vendor who mocked him looked at the cash, then at Ray, and suddenly found a very important stain on his own counter. Ray noticed. For a desperate man, that tiny silence was a meal. He folded one hospital receipt and pushed it across the table with the cup. Keep that, Ray said. Prove the money went where he said it would. He took the receipt. Ordinary paper. ATM. Withdrawal line, hospital payment stamp, and Ruby Navarro's name printed near middle. No glow. Still, true sight flickered once, as if the world had noticed a poor man choosing hope while everyone else priced him as meat. He put the still water cup and receipt into his pocket vault. The real win of the night. Seeing Lydia on the ground felt good. The guards felt better, but the Cup was a future enemy's bad day, waiting quietly in porcelain, then every altar. In Crown Mall Plaza went dark, the red, green, blue, and white reward glows. Snapped shut at once. Above the skyline, the moon rose early and wrong, swollen. Red behind the glass towers of Fair Lake City, people screamed because the altars. The altars did not disappear. Instead, glowing countdowns burned over every stone mouth. 59 minutes 58:57, reward beams vanished and altar mouths widened. Even the tiny green altar at the plaza steps began breathing as if something inside had stopped waiting politely. Ray whispered, "What is that?" He looked up at the blood moon, feeling his abyss drake egg pulse inside his pocket vault. It was hungry. The city had turned every ignored altar into a timed, locked door. And he held a legendary cup, a new frontman, one last fourth-act stub, mythic dagger, and a dragon egg that treated disaster like a free dinner. The blood moon did not make Fair Lake City quiet. It forced a countdown out. Loud, every altar mouth glowed with red numbers, sending people running from stone block to another, trying to decode the timers before they hit absolute zero. Rich offerers threw jewelry, desperate families tossed cherished photos. One man threw car keys, screaming when the altar spat them right back. While the countdown kept ticking down, reward beams were gone, signaling the first major rule change: no red pillars, no gold columns, and absolutely no proof of victory. The blood moon hid the winners and punished the ignored. Pretty good for him, but terrible for everyone else. Ray Navarro stood by his table, holding the cash stacked tight. He stared at the young man, desperately wanting an explanation but dreading the truth. "Take the money to Ruby," he told him. "What about the cup?" "Sold." Ray then gestured to the red counters, asking what it was. "A bad night to be normal," he replied. Ray swallowed, then grabbed his receipts and fled toward the taxis. He let him go. Kindness only mattered if it survived long enough to be useful. The hospital receipt Ray had given him sat in his pocket vault near the still water cup. It kept flickering at the edge of his true sight, promising a strange possibility. Such possibility was expensive under a blood moon. He followed the nearest silent pole, in his vision leading him to a dark service alley behind the plaza. A small black altar stood beside the dumpsters. No crowds, no gold, just starless carving at the top, and a counter ticking down from 43 minutes. His true sight opened, revealing hidden demand, hope paid for with deep fear. Human market value was totally irrelevant here. Only the strongest resonance mattered. Desperate father, he stared at the receipt in his hand. Ray had not offered it to an altar. He gave it to him, desperately wanting proof that his daughter truly mattered. That stubborn human sentiment was exactly what the altars loved more than diamonds. He carefully placed the folded receipt inside the starless mouse. The altar did not flare, it went pitch black. Then a single point of white light appeared, small enough to hide under his thumb, yet bright enough to make his ribs ache. True sight named it a lifeline star. Grade legendary. Function: one-use death reversal. If the bonded holder suffers fatal collapse, it restores body and soul to their last survivable state, consumed upon activation. A pre-activation spark warns when death gets close enough to breathe on. His neck, for once he made no jokes, immediately bonding with it. The white point sank deep under his skin, settling behind his heart like a second chance. With teeth, the starless altar cracked, satisfied, and its red counter vanished. That was the blood moon's second absolute rule. It did not care about the offering. It looked valuable, demanding an exact answer before the timer ran out. A sudden scream echoed over the rooftops before he could even test his third rule. Many screams. He scrambled up the alley fire stairs to look. 3 blocks away, a neglected altar hit zero right in front of a closed discount store. Its stone mouth split open, releasing a monster made of wet, sticky asphalt. The monster crawled out on 6 legs, while someone nearby started live streaming everything. People will film absolutely anything when fear and craving for attention mix. On the phone screen, the monster grabbed someone. He had desperately been throwing car keys before the beast slammed him hard into a parked delivery truck. The feed cut to static, dropping 3 red chips. His true sight caught the shape from afar. Altar fragments. Honestly, the city had now basically become a deadly vending machine. It killed its own customers and paid them in evolution material. He almost smiled, almost. Then a child screamed nearby, and his smile died before it got comfortable. He leaped from the fire stairs, crashing heavily onto a delivery awning down below. He slammed into the pavement, cracking it, before running toward the beast. The asphalt beast was tearing open a bus when he arrived, cornering a helpless woman. She and 2 kids were trapped inside, the driver desperately holding the emergency lever. Blood ran down his face as he held on. The monster turned toward him as the soul dagger slid instantly into his waiting hand. It had been quiet since the wraith, but now it woke up incredibly hungry. "You get fear," he told it. "The egg gets blood, and I get fragments." "Everyone behaves," he added. The abyss drake egg pulsed from his pocket vault. It disagreed. Later, he muttered as the beast lunged. His fate watch ticked 3 beats ahead, warning of a swing meant to tear him open. He lunged forward, cleanly slicing through the monster's front leg first. The soul dagger dragged out black sparks, making a sound like a dying radio. The beast staggered. He forced core blood into his legs, leaping onto the bus hood. He stabbed straight through the asphalt skull as the dagger drank up its raw fear. The body melted into road sludge. 3 red chips clattered onto the pavement. The driver stared at him through the cracked windshield. "Open the door," he commanded. The driver hit the lever. The woman pulled her kids out and immediately fled. Good names only made survivors expensive. He quickly grabbed the altar fragments. He fed calamity residue to the egg before it pulsed like an unpaid landlord. The shell warmed as dark markings flickered once. But it was still not enough. The dragon demanded far stronger meat. Seriously, you cannot blame him for wishing the city would stop proving him right. Before he could even step off the bus, another counter hit 0 nearby. A nearby jewelry store altar suddenly released a massive swarm of fist-sized stone beetles. They poured across the sidewalk, swarming a woman trapped behind a security gate. A normal hero would have made a grand speech, but he simply kicked a heavy newspaper box. He channeled core blood through his arms and turned the soul dagger sideways. The first sweep shattered 12 shells, and the second forced the rest to target him instead. That was all he needed. 30 seconds later, the woman was running away. The beetles were crushed to paste, and 6 tiny altar fragments clicked into his hand. A Pharaoh emergency alert lit up every phone, a federal anomaly response warning. Your official notice accepted verified altar fragments at all emergency collection sites. High compensation was waiting. Do not approach any blood moon calamities. The reward amount was massive. The crowd saw money, but he saw bait, if Pharaoh wanted. Those fragments so badly, they had to be worth far more than rent. True. Sight confirmed it when he held one up. Altar fragments. Their function was condensed. Altar shells and calamity cores. They could feed evolution and strengthen bonded. Growth items or stabilize unstable ritual rewards. He slid them into his pocket. Vault, sorry, Director Isaac Penn, he muttered. His private god machine would eat. First, that was enough public rescue for 1 block, then the elite calamity. Screamed from the plaza. It rose out of the same green altar where Nightfall had been farming desperate people an hour earlier. The stone mouth split open and something wearing all those stolen failed charms crawled out like a human. Made of broken luck, rings, cracked pendants, burnt strings, and half-dead. Talismans hung from its body. Every time someone tried to run, one of the charms flashed and tripped them, blinded them, or made their shoes stick to the pavement. The Nightfall thugs who had called people human slots were the first ones it grabbed. Talk about instant karma. But then the calamity lifted a teenager by the neck and fun left the area. He crossed the plaza through the panicking crowd. The elite calamity saw him and opened a mouth full of other people's offerings. Mine, it hissed in 3 stolen voices. Greedy, he replied, still respecting the hustle but still planning to kill it. It snapped a necklace charm. His left knee buckled as borrowed bad luck tried to fold his body into the ground. The charm was unstable and temporary, borrowed from the helpless people Nightfall had fleeced. The Stillwater cup sat in his pocket vault, empty and useless until he filled it with gray rain, so he did the rude version, throwing core blood heat through his knee until the charm's bad luck lost the argument with pure muscle pain. Shot up his thigh, but he kept moving. Fate watch ticked. The calamity's next charm flashed before its arm could move. He slashed its wrist, and the soul dagger ate the resentment trapped in those stolen talismans, consuming it one ugly spark at a time. The creature shrieked and backed toward Lydia's broken heel spot. Perfect, he kicked it into the exact patch of pavement where she had fallen. Then he drove the soul dagger deep through its chest. Every stolen charm went black. The calamity exploded into red fragments, green dust, and a rain of useless jewelry. The crowd did not cheer. They were too busy scrambling away from the man who had just killed the thing their own greed had fed. That reaction was fine. Fear gave him privacy. he swept all the broken charms into a plastic takeout bag and left before the pharaoh's sirens reached the plaza. Northcut meat smelled like bleach, cold metal, and the kind of privacy money cannot buy after. The world ends. He fed the broken charms to the blood crown altar first, the red. Teeth chewed through fake luck, burnt protection, weak speed, and failed. Healing, the altar spat out 3 bottles of core blood and 1 darker bead that made the soul dagger hum. He fed the bead to the dagger. The blade grew a thin red line along its spine. He fed calamity residue to the abyss drake egg. The egg drank until the heart-tail markings glowed under the. He held the egg, still not hatched, still greedy and still his. By midnight, the blood moon had turned Fair Lake City into a complete slaughterhouse. He did not chase down every scream. He simply could not. His past self would have hated that. But he understood that dead heroes cannot save anyone tomorrow, so he prioritized high-value targets, altars near desperate crowds, and calamities with fragments. Hunting monsters carrying enough blood to matter. Every victory gave the city one less trouble and gave him another resource. That was not noble, just efficient. Under a blood moon, efficiency was the only real mercy he could afford. Ray called while he was dumping another bag of failed rewards into a freezer crate outside Northcut. Ray told him that Ruby was paid through the week. His voice sounded wrecked. He agreed that was good, then asked why Ray sounded worse. Ray took a breath and explained that Nightfall had contacted him. They knew he bought altar items for cash tonight. They promised better treatment for Ruby if Ray brought those purchases to them. When asked what else, Ray said if he refused, they would wonder who was funding him. That was the real threat, not friendship but a velvet-lined collar. He opened the crate and stared at the useless rewards Ray had already collected from panicked citizens looking for quick cash. Cracked charms, failed talismans, half-charged stones, and ugly little items nobody respected. To Nightfall they were bait. To his blood crown they. For breakfast he asked if Ray still wanted in. Ray said no. He praised that answer, but Ray added that Ruby's survival did not depend on what he wanted. He called that a better answer and told Ray to listen to them. He warned Ray not to make promises he could not keep or mention him. If they asked about funding, Ray should blame desperation. They would believe that. Ray gave a bitter laugh and asked what if they made him prove himself. He told Ray to call before he bled. Ray quieted down, amused by his tone. He joked that bleeding is just a scheduling issue when organized. Ray hung up. He liked Ray more for not saying thank you. Gratitude was incredibly cheap before any real results. Ray had a sick daughter, a dangerous invitation, and a wealthy stranger asking him to stand near wolves. He did not owe him any loyalty. Yet only usefulness, that was enough. This secret recycling network began with 1 freezer crate, 1 desperate father, and a city full of fools selling failed rewards for dirt cheap. By the time the eastern sky began to pale, the lifeline star rested behind his heart. The egg surged again, and his soul dagger grew sharper from consuming raw fear, while his blood crown turned Nightfall's trash scraps into permanent strength. That was his payoff. Then his fate watch ticked, pointing toward the road behind Northcut Meats. He closed the freezer crate and cut the yard light. 3 vehicles slowly rolled past the far fence with headlights off. The lead car was a black Maybach with a fresh scrape along the lower door from hitting a guard at Crown Mall Plaza. Lydia sat in the backseat, her cheek still swollen, her eyes burning with a dangerous shame that demanded dead witnesses. Nightfall thugs stepped out behind her. You just know things are about to get ugly. She wanted to flex borrowed power before Ray's little network grew teeth. He let her ambush follow him for 2 full blocks before getting bored. The smart running through Northcut's back tunnels would have been easy, letting the gray rain or someone else's bad luck handle the problem, but he had other plans. If Nightfall wanted to waste men on his ex-girlfriend's pride, he wanted to see the cost. He walked away from Northcut Meats into an open loading yard between 2 empty warehouses. No crowds, no civilians, and no altars nearby to get damaged if the night got loud. Then he turned around. Stop wasting my time, he said to the dark. 3 vehicles rolled, slowly led by a black Maybach. 2 vans spread out behind it. Nightfall thugs climbed out holding short blades, stun rods, cheap charms, and way too much confidence. For people who had never seen a mythic dagger devour a wraith, Lydia stepped out. Last, her cheek was still swollen from his heavy hand. That made her smile even uglier as she noted he chose a lonely place. He noted the witnesses, but Lydia claimed they were actually Clean up, their strongest thug stepped forward with a shaved head and a thick neck, wielding a machete with a green light crawling along the edge. No name. Good, because names made corpses feel more important than they were, he pointed. His weapon as Lydia snapped that Mara wanted him alive, but she wanted him kneeling. The thug glanced back like she had annoyed him's. That tiny look revealed plenty. Lydia had borrowed Nightfall's men, but she did not own them. She was just a useful pawn in a nice coat. The thug charged. His fate watch ticked once. The machete came down toward his shoulder, but he caught the blade between two fingers. The green light on the steel shook. The thug's eyes widened. He grabbed the handle with both hands and pulled, but the blade did not move. Squeeze, crack. The steel shattered. The sound echoed as Lydia's smile died before the broken tip hit the ground. Talk about an absolute mismatch. He calmly asked if that was their absolute best. A fist punched toward him. He let the fist get close before driving a knee straight into the man's stomach. Core blood folded the thug around the impact. He snatched the broken weapon and hurled it right through the tire of the nearest van. The vehicle sank with a sharp hiss. Fewer exits. Nightfall began moving as a coordinated group after that. Better than basic hunters, worse than the Wraith. A stun rod cracked against his ribs. Core blood burned under the impact. A blade sliced his sleeve, but missed skin because the Fate Watch pulled his shoulder back half a beat early. A red charm burst near his face, trying to flood his mind with panic. Suddenly his soul dagger slid into his hand. The moment the charm touched the edge, it went silent. This was new. The dagger did not just cut bodies. It hated cheap fear, trying to mimic real terror. He slashed the first attacker from collarbone to hip. The soul dagger absorbed the residual energy before the body hit the asphalt. The second thug tried to run, so he threw the blade. It pinned his shadow to the ground, and then his body crashed down. A third crushed two speed charms and blurred behind him. The Fate Watch mapped the blur's trajectory, so he drove his elbow into his jaw. The thug collapsed, choking through broken teeth. He stepped over him and kicked the weapon into the dark. One of the vans reversed, but he lifted the broken machete handle and hurled it directly through the windshield. The driver ducked as the van crashed into a loading post, folding the hood. Lydia backed. He walked toward the Maybach, the yard filled with realizing thugs. They were just decoration. That was his favorite sound in this new world. The strongest thug crawled, reaching for a black flare. Miles stepped in. He pinned the wrist. Who sent the luck? Miles demanded. The man spat blood, mocking if killing street crews scared Nightfall. No, Miles replied. He just thought it improved the neighborhood. He pressed down. A bone cracked. The thug shrieked. It came from Mara. Lydia was under her mark. Lydia's face drained of color. There it was. Mara Sable survived. She was lending pieces of her escape system to prettier trash. Miles looked at her. You bought a leash and called it protection. She shook her head rapidly, denying any fear. The last two thugs attacked together to prove her wrong. One lunged high with a blade, while one swept low with a chain. The watch ticked. His soul dagger split the chain. A sliced arm. The two attackers crashed down in opposite directions, and the dagger drank their fear, humming warmly. Now Lydia was completely alone with her Maybach, her bruised cheek, and the men who were supposed to make him kneel. She collapsed before he even touched her. Crawling, her knees hit the asphalt, neat fingers scraping black dust and broken glass, staring up. Through ruined makeup, she desperately tried to look beautiful enough to survive. She begged him to listen. Stepping closer, Miles noted that this was new. Lydia flinched. She made a mistake. Troy and Nightfall meant nothing. She promised money, gear, access. She would lie to protect him. She wanted him back. The entire yard went quiet, save for a sputtering, dying van engine. Once that offer would have broken him, but that past version of him had worse posture and paid for her dinners. He crouched before her. Lydia's eyes tried to shine as she reached out for his sleeve. But Miles caught her wrist before she could make contact. Don't smear Troy's fingerprints on my clothes, he warned. Her mouth trembled. She whispered he didn't mean it. Miles spoke clearly for everyone to hear. The blood crown devours cracked charms, dead luck, and failed trash. Even the crown would spit her back. Rejection cut deeper than any slap. She stopped playing pretty, a bitter, terrified look twisting her face. Suddenly the charm at her throat shattered. Blood mist exploded around her. Miles plunged his soul dagger forward, slicing a red line through the fog, and Lydia screamed from inside. For a brief second, he saw her shoulder split wide open before the mist snapped backward like a pulled ribbon. Lydia was gone. The lingering scent was familiar. Iron, perfume, and Mara's Cowardly escape trick, gray rain would have weakened this technique. A full water cup would have ruined it entirely, but his cup remained empty. The sky was clear and she had escaped. Borrowed power saved her today. Fine, a fleeing rat would guide him to the nest. The watch ticked. This time it pointed away from Lydia, targeting a nearby roofline. Miles looked up. A man in a gray federal field jacket lowered a compact camera just. Slightly too late, his radio hissed, ordering Agent Flint to pull back immediately. Agent Flint, Pharaoh had deployed watchers closer than Ivy Dalton's public sweeps. He was close enough to show his face, and the soul dagger gleaming over dead Nightfall guards. With bodies at his feet, he charged. Flint scrambled to run, moving surprisingly fast for a target. He carried heavy government gear and pure panic, crossing the yard and leaping forward. He bounced off a crushed van hood, reaching the roof ladder just as Flint kicked it loose. The ladder fell. He caught the bottom rung, locking eyes with Flint. Flint looked trained, but he was about to discover his training's ceiling. He climbed up one-handed. Flint threw a silver sensor disc at his head. The disc burst into white static, instantly blurring his fate watch. True sight stuttered. The roofline split into 3 false angles. An annoying toy, Flint used that breath to dive across the roof. He dropped behind the next building. By the time his senses cleared, Flint vanished. Flint escaped in a muddy vehicle, muddy government plates, no chase. Too many bodies to clean. Besides, Lydia was already gone with the mist. In Navarro, he had his face now. Things were about to get loud. First, collect the loot. He needed to move before more guards arrived. Back in the yard, the soul dagger finished eating the lingering fear. Loot secured, weak charms and broken rods went straight into the vault. The cracked machete followed, even the black flare. He was not picky. The blood crown welcomed it all, useful gear, the strongest guard still breathed. Only one thug survived, terrified, shaking. He spoke up before being asked. "Eastdock Warehouse," he whimpered. "Mara is locking it down, purging everyone tonight." Lydia had a simple mission, bring him back or prove he fled. In Rene Navarro, the thug's eyes flickered. That was answer enough. He leaned in close. "Speak. A new buyer wants you inside," he gasped. "They think you can feed the slots." He stood. The thug reached. The man begged for mercy. He spared him, only stealing his flare pouch instead. Let him crawl. Fear travels much faster when a survivor tells the tale. But another threat pulled at his true sight, a trace he had ignored. It led away from the yard, straight toward an abandoned pet market. Located right on the district edge, rusty cages rattled loudly in the cold wind. Signs promised loyal pets, cheap loyalty, the kind people buy instead of earning. Right in the center stood a dark, ancient bloodline altar. The low, black relic was carved with nesting, cyclic family patterns. A heavy chain circled them both, his true sight activated instantly. The altar sensed a real, living bloodline holding true raw power. It rejected cheap offerings, bought heritages, and dead name crests. All those useless family rings meant nothing to this old relic. He suddenly thought of Daniel Keaton's burning calendar. And the ghost of Angela Keaton whispering from the shadows. Every powerful group in Fair Lake craved titles and status. They all wanted some cheap, borrowed mark of authority to control other people. But he had absolutely none of those prestigious labels or wealthy allies. No rich family backed his play, and absolutely no crew watched his back in a fight. He just had a dirty basement, a hungry egg, and a lethal dagger. Plus a stubborn habit of surviving anyone who dared underestimate him. An inheritance demanded a founder. He ripped a plank off an empty kennel. The wood was cheap, damp, and splintered right at the edge. Perfect. He sliced his palm with the soul dagger and wrote one word in blood: Keaton. Then he pressed the plank into the altar's mouth. The bloodline altar bit down, the whole pet market shook, cages slammed open and shut down the aisles. Invisible things sniffed the air. For a split second, he felt every empty leash in the building pull toward his wrist. The soul dagger hummed, core blood burned. He did not kneel, no. Ancestors, he said, no borrowed throne. His line starts where he says it starts. The altar went still, then it opened. Inside sat a pulsing black-red organ, wrapped in a shell of bone threads, beating slowly without blood. Nest. Heart mythic grade, it produces, stores, and nourishes oathworm. Pairs when fed blood, fear, and bonded will. Beside it lay a sealed glass tube, with 2 pale worms curled around each other, like a question nobody decent would ask. Blood oathworm, legendary grade. Its function is paired control. Parasite, the mother host holds command pressure over the child host. Betrayal. Escape or attack by the child host triggers pain, tracking, and shutdown. The limit, it controls action, not interpretation. A clever host can still obey like a knife. He picked up the tube. The worms twitched toward the soul. Dagger then toward his bleeding palm. There was nothing clean about that. Reward, good. Clean tools rarely worked on people like Marissa Abel. He stored the nest heart and blood oathworm in the pocket vault and fed the altar a strip of nightfall fear residue as thanks. The bone carvings closed like teeth. Instant consequence. Right on cue, his phone starts buzzing. Before he reached the market door, he answered the call. Ray. He did not waste a word. Nightfall wants Ray at Eastdock Warehouse tonight, Ray said. They know. He bought failed rewards. They said if he brings his inventory, Ruby stays untouched. If he does not, they find her room. Behind him, Miles heard hospital machines and a child's soft cough. Ruby was awake. That made the threat worse. He looked back at the empty cages, the bloodline altar, and the place where his name had just become a weapon. FAO had his face. Lydia had Mara's blood mist. Nightfall had Ray by the throat through his daughter, and in his pocket vault, a mother worm and child worm curled around each other, waiting for the first predator arrogant enough to deserve a leash. Go in, he told Ray. His breathing stopped for half a second. Miles, Ray said. Go in, he repeated, smiling like a desperate man. Count doors, count guards, touch nothing he does not have. If they move Ruby, call him before becoming brave. Ray's voice went low. And if they ask who he works for, Miles looked at the blood drying across his palm. Tell them hope, he said. They will laugh, let them. The call ended. Outside, the last red edge of the blood moon sank behind Fair Lake City, and Eastdock Warehouse waited with Lydia's shame, Mara's lockdown, Ray's first step. Inside, and every human slot Nightfall thought it owned, Ray's Eastdock Warehouse message should have sent him straight at Nightfall's throat. Instead, his phone rang again before he finished loading his freezer crate. Walt Brenner did not waste time saying hello. His voice came through rough and fast. Briar Hollow Farm is screaming, Miles. The Hods are eating through steel gates, and their blood is black. Ray was waiting for Nightfall to text him in entry time. Ruby was still breathing. Eastdock Warehouse would not open its ritual doors until nightfall. Briar Hollow Farm was already bleeding. That made the detour ugly, urgent, and profitable. Walt was the only farm broker still willing to take Northcutt Meats calls after the altar era made every normal supply contract look like a joke. He knew where the animals were. He knew which owners were hiding disasters. Most importantly, he knew fear when it squealed through a phone line. Walt reminded him that he wanted altar-touched blood. He had found a whole farm full of it. If Pharaoh seals the place first, he gets nothing. If Nightfall gets there first, they get everything. He looked at the abyssal drake egg pulsing inside the pocket vault. The egg wanted stronger blood. Ray needed him stronger before Eastdock Warehouse opened. Tonight, the soul dagger wanted something that hated life, the blood. Crown altar wanted anything ugly enough to become refined power. Send the gate code, he demanded. Walt sighed, asking if he was really going in. No, he said he was going shopping. Before he left Northcutt, he held the Stillwater cup under the loading dock gutter. The last gray rain of the blood moon slid into the porcelain and stayed there, heavy and silent. Empty cup, empty threat. Full cup, bad day for anything borrowed. Briar Hollow Farm sat beyond a strip of low fields and broken fences, close enough to Fair Lake City for a black pillar to be seen, far enough that screams arrived late. Walt waited by the outer gate in his truck with the engine running. He rolled the window down 3 inches. Walt announced that was as far as he would go. Smart, he replied. Did he not want backup? He had brought family. The abyssal drake egg pulsed from the pocket vault. The soul dagger hummed like it had heard the insult and wanted credit. Walt looked at the locked gate, then at him. He said the owner had called crying, warning that the hogs were turning inside out before the line cut. He had heard trees cracking before the signal died. Any people inside, he asked. Maybe 2 farmhands, maybe none, and Walt was not driving in to count bones. That was honest enough. He broke the gate chain with one hand and walked through. The first mutated hog hit him before he reached the barn. It came low through the fog, all bristled meat, split tusks, and black foam dripping from its jaw. Normal hogs are already mean enough. This thing had altar rotted. Its eyes and a body that looked like it had been packed with extra muscle by an angry butcher. Fate watch ticked. Charge angle, left tusk, follow-up bite. He stepped aside, caught one tusk, and drove the soul dagger down through the skull. The body skittered past him and hit the fence. Black blood poured out. The egg pulsed so hard the pocket vault felt warm against his ribs. Fine, he muttered, promising it a taste. He let the egg drink through the vault's opening just long enough to pull the blood into a dark thread. The shell veins brightened. Meaningful but not enough. Soon one beast became three, and three became a dozen. They burst from the barn, the feed shed, the ditch, and the broken farrowing pens. They moved like a stampede, but fate watched turn the rush into separate beats, one body at a time, one angle, one mistake, one cut. The soul dagger ate fear from beasts that no longer knew they were animals. The egg drank black blood. A scream came from the feed silo before he could make. It only gets worse. A farmhand hangs from the ladder with his boot caught between bent rungs. Below him, two plague hogs circle, snapping high enough to scrape sparks from the metal. Spotting the dagger in his hand, the farmhand screams about the tree, yelling that the blood goes straight to it. A useful clue, better than nothing. He crosses the yard, slices the first hog through the spine, and kicks the second hard enough to shatter its jaw against the silo base. The farmhand falls badly, but he catches his jacket before his ankle snaps, tossing him toward the safety of the gate. Tells him to run. The farmhand looks past him with a gray face, gasping that the owner fed altar scraps under that locust tree to make the hogs bigger. There it was, human greed, not random rot, but a curse with real roots. The farmhand limps for the road while the black blood from the dead hogs crawls behind him in the opposite direction. He starts to enjoy himself. First mistake. We all knew easy farming makes a man arrogant. He cuts through the last hog near the center yard and lets its body collapse beside the old locust tree. The tree stands alone behind the main barn, far too big for the property, its bark swollen with knots looking like sealed eyes. Every black blood trail on the farm begins moving toward its roots, not flowing downhill but crawling. He stops smiling as true sight opens over the tree and immediately blurs. Hidden altar root detected. Caretaker function active. Feeding threshold exceeded. That last warning comes too late. The locust tree wakes up, its bark splitting down the trunk. A wet, black eye opens inside. Ancient wood, furious that he had been slaughtering its livestock. Roots tear through the ground while branches crack into hooked limbs. Every dead hog jerks once, draining its remaining blood into the soil, sinking flat as if the farm had swallowed them. Then a black pillar punches into the sky, revealing the city. Perfect. Walt's truck reverses outside the fence so fast that gravel sprays through the gate. The tree boss turns its eye toward him, a harsh voice scraping out of the bark, not loud but big enough to make his bones shudder. Fief of rot. He raises the soul dagger, muttering that it labeled the hogs wrong, since they were clearance items. But the first vine whips across the yard, tracked by his fate watch. His body still barely manages to dodge. The vine cuts through his jacket, opening his shoulder to the bone. Core blood seals the wound halfway, but then the edges blacken, reopening with rot poison. Good, because he absolutely hates boring injuries. A second vine wraps his ankle and slams him into the barn wall, shattering boards. His ribs crack so hard that the lifeline star behind his heart sparks once in. Warning, not spent, just warning. That makes this fight much more expensive. He drives core blood through his lungs and rolls before a fan of leaf blades shreds the dirt. Where his head just was, the leaves sink into the ground, hissing like hot knives. He slashes a vine with his soul dagger, but the deep cut immediately closes around the blade. The tree laughs through snapping branches. His mythic dagger can hurt ghosts, fear, and men, but this thing is a rooted altar with a farm for a stomach. The locust slams one root down, and every dead hog he cut open twitches upward on strings of black sap. Not alive, but worse. Meat puppets with razor tusks. They charge from three sides while the eye stays buried behind the bark. The farmhand's warning bought him an answer, but answers do not block sharp teeth. He cuts two puppets down, catching a third tusk. Rot pierces his thigh and tries to crawl up his veins, but his core blood burns it away. A different problem requires a different tool. When the next vine targets his throat, he pulls the Stillwater cup from his pocket vault. He hurls its gray rain straight into the incoming vine's path. The splash is tiny, but the reaction is massive as the vine convulses, losing its dark shine. It drops like a dead rope, while the gray rain eats away the borrowed rot inside, leaving only plain wood to crack under his boot, which makes the tree's eye widen. That reaction was definitely worth bleeding for, so you can be rude to the weather, he says. The tree screams, every branch moves as the entire farm turns into sharp blades. He runs sideways through its rhythm. His fate watch starts showing death angles immediately. They appear faster than his body can react, Leaf cuts slash his cheek, forearm, and thigh. His core blood seals what it can, but the rot tears some wounds wide open again. The soul dagger devours the resentment on the vines, but this massive tree has no fear. He needs to target the eye, and the tree knows it. It buries the eye deep. Hiding behind a massive root cage, the monster raises a thick branch like an executioner's blade. Quickly pulling out his hope matchbox, a normal flame would die instantly in this damp air. But a hope match is different. He strikes it against the box, bringing a strange light to life. The tiny light reveals a ridiculous truth, that every desperate creature believes the final blow has already been decided. He throws the match into the root cage. The flame does not spread, it chooses. It races along the dead gray rain vine first, then jumps straight into the fresh rot roots. Burning like dry paper, the black bark curls back to expose the eye for a brief moment. The massive execution branch comes crashing down. His fate watch shows absolutely no safe way out. So he charges straight forward. The branch smashes his back, driving him down to one knee. Something in his spine screams as his lifeline star sparks even brighter. Still not spent, he mutters, shoving every single drop of hot core blood into his legs to stand up and drive the soul dagger straight into the eye. The first inch resists, but the second one screams. The third inch shatters the entire farm. Black sap erupts around the blade. Violently thrashing, the tree boss rips its own roots from the soil as he twists the dagger with both hands, splitting the red line on its spine into a darker edge. The soul dagger learns rot and devours the eye. Up above, the massive black pillar at Briar Hollow Farm snaps like a cable. The giant locust tree collapses inward, folding its trunk, roots, and altar stone into a fist-sized, dark red heart. It hits the dirt right at his feet. For 3 seconds, he just breathes as true sight returns. System alerts appear in fragments. Soul dagger evolution. Rock cut trait awakened. The altar heart is compatible with blood crown evolution. Rot mark applied. Looking down at his left wrist, he sees a dark mark curling under his skin, shaped like a tiny root wrapped around a red point. It does not hurt, which actually worries him more. His true sight tries to read it deeper but fails. The target source exceeds his range. The warning says the child of rot has noticed him, making his new strength feel small. He ignores the sudden chill, quickly grabs the miniature altar heart, and prepares to leave. Vanishing before the Black Pillar's audience arrives, the rescued farmhand has already reached Walt's truck. He points with shaking hands, utterly terrified. Not to accuse him, but because he just saw a man walk out of absolute hell. Of a farm that devoured its own dead, that reaction was huge. By nightfall, someone would report to Pharaoh that the Black Pillar hadn't just faded, it was killed. In fact, Pharaoh's headlights were already flashing far down the road, too dark. Unmarked vehicles cut across the field from the opposite side. Nightfall's forces had spotted the pillar too. Scavengers were about to swarm like flies. Walt hadn't run far. His truck waited at the bend with the passenger door wide. Open, his face pale behind the glass. "Did you kill it?" Walt asked. Miles answered that he just changed ownership. Walt stared at the farm behind him then at his shredded jacket and the black mark on his wrist. "I am not asking," Walt muttered. "Good, have it," Miles replied. Back at Northcutt Meats, he didn't even clean up first. He went straight to the basement and fed the miniature altar heart to the blood. Crown altar, its crown-shaped mouth stretched wider than ever, red teeth clamped down on the heart. The basement floor trembled. The drains below Northcutt pulsed. The abyss drake egg rolled closer from the pocket vault without being invited. Talk about a greedy little beast. The blood crown altar swallowed the altar heart whole. For a moment, the glowing red stone lines softened too. Dark gold, a new bottle rose from the center. It wasn't dark and violent like normal core blood. This liquid was crystal clear, almost warming the glass vessel. His true sight labeled it as refined core blood, permanent, strengthening with reduced violence, repairing damaged vitality, and purifying corrupt blood. It stabilized fragile bodies like Ruby Navarro. His phone rang before he could even touch the bottle, Ray's name flashing. When he answered, Ray wasn't at the East Dock warehouse anymore. He was standing in a hospital hallway, surrounded by blaring alarms and sprinting feet. "Miles," Ray said, his voice completely breaking. That cracked tone said more than any doctor could. He gasped out that Ruby crashed and might not survive the night. Miles stared at the refined core blood glowing in his palm. The black pillar had already drawn Pharaoh and Nightfall toward Briar Hollow Farm. The rot mark now placed something far worse over his name, and yet, this first gentle miracle showed up at the exact moment a little girl was losing her fight. Using it at Fair Lake Hospital would expose him, talk about an impossible decision. Meant Ray's loyalty was worthless and Ruby would die. The blood crown altar pulsed. Once patient and hungry, Miles tucked the bottle away and headed for the door. Keep her breathing, he ordered Ray. I am coming. He went to Fair Lake General Hospital with the refined core blood hidden away, despite black pillars worth of trouble chasing his back. The smart move was hiding. Pharaoh had seen too many lights, while nightfall had Ray by the throat. Briar Hollow Farm had branded Miles as something called the Child of Rot. Any normal man with his inventory would have locked himself deep under Northcutt Meats, waiting for the city to calm down, but Ruby didn't have that kind of time. Ray had chosen danger to save her. Now Miles had to make that choice worth surviving. He walked straight through the hospital doors. Ray met him in the hallway outside her room, looking 10 years older than he had at the food stall. Clara Navarro stood right behind him, her hands pressed over her mouth, eyes bloodshot and her body completely frozen in that terrifying way people get when panic has nowhere left to go. Ray didn't ask if Miles had. He brought help, but looking at his face, Ray immediately knew it was something far worse. Inside, little Ruby lies under a thin blanket, her pale skin almost matching the pillow. Her eyes are shut tight, while the nearby monitor keeps emitting sharp, unsettling beeps. Each flat sound makes Clara flinch. Near the bed, a doctor stands quietly. She whispers instructions to a nurse. Her name badge reads Dr. Priya Nair. Seeing Ray enter with him, the doctor frowns and tells Ray only family is allowed. Ray's voice is raw as he answers that this man is the reason they had another week. Dr. Nair insists that does not make him family, while he looks down at Ruby. He quietly remarks that it actually makes this simple, prompting Clara to ask who he is. He introduces himself as the man who bought the cup and the one offering one ugly chance. Ray grabs his sleeve, whispering May, as he lets the desperate father hold on. No promises, he warns. No procedures or miracle speeches, just a resource to repair damaged vitality. It does not come from this hospital, and no official badge has approved it. He leaves the choice to them, promising to walk away if they refuse. Dr. Nair steps forward, protesting that he cannot give a child unknown medication. He stares at the doctor until she finally stops in her tracks. He is not here to argue with a system that is already losing her. He is only here to ask her parents before it is too late. Monitor alarms blare loudly, cutting through the room harder than any shout. Clara rushes over to the bed and tightly grasps her daughter's hand. Ruby's fingers barely twitch. Clara whispers for Ray, who looks over anxiously. Ray looks at the alarm at him and then at Ruby. Ray chooses the ugly chance. Clara nods, silent tears streaming down her face. Begging him to save her, Ray walks over and locks the door. The doctor hears the click and freezes, calling out to Ray. Ray keeps his eyes locked on Ruby, warning that he will scream if things go wrong. But if she is saved, the doctor saw nothing that would make her a lab report. This is not about loyalty. It is a desperate father choosing the only available option. Our main character pulls out a vial of refined core blood from his pocket vault. To the startled doctor, a small bottle suddenly materialized out of thin air. This slip-up was not ideal, and Dr. Nair caught every single detail. Her expression shifts completely, recognizing the impossible right in front of her. He breaks the black wax with his thumb, testing a drop on his skin first. His true sight confirms it is clean, with no rot or dark backlash. The blood crown altar created this for healing. He gently lifts Ruby's head. He tips the bottle to her lips. For 1 second, silence, then Ruby coughs. Clara lets out a choked gasp, and Ruby takes a single swallow. The refined core blood flows down her throat in a faint, glowing red-gold thread. It is barely visible, but her gray skin immediately begins to color. The deep dark circles fade, and the flatlining monitor suddenly begins to stabilize. It beats in a steady rhythm that feels like hope. Dr. Nair steps toward the bed, completely drawn in by the miracle. She demands to know what he gave her, but he simply answers she saw nothing. When she protests that she saw enough, he tells her to understand enough. Clara's hand shook. Clara broke first, bending over the bed to sob into the blanket. Ray did not cry right away, watching the monitor as if it might betray him if he blinked. Then Ruby opened her eyes, her voice tiny. Rough and annoyed at the world. Mom, Ruby whispered, I am hungry. Ray dropped to his knees beside the bed. Not the monitor or doctor, not the label in true sight mattered. A dying child asked for food, forcing Death to step back from the bed like a caught trespasser. Dr. Prunier touched Ruby's wrist, checked her eyes, looked at the monitor, then stared at him, with fear hidden behind professional training. If anyone asks, he told the doctor, she stabilized before you entered the room. The doctor's mouth tightened, replying, that is not how records work. Then write the shortest record of your career, he replied. Ray stood, wiping his face with both hands before turning to him. The desperation was still there, but something deep down had shifted. He was no longer bargaining for just one more day, but choosing who to become after. Receiving it, Ray offered to follow him anywhere, but he refused, telling Ray to choose. Debt makes cowards, but choice makes useful men. Ray looked from Ruby to Clara. Clara held Ruby's hand and nodded once. Ray turned back to him, declaring that he chose to protect this city's children from nightfall at all costs. Good, now loyalty had a spine. His phone buzzed with a message from Ray's burner. Even though Ray stood right in front of him, Ray stared at his screen and went pale again, muttering that they moved his Eastdock warehouse entry time. They want him there tonight, thinking Ruby's crash will make him obedient. Let them keep thinking, he replied. Dr. Prunier stepped between them and the exit, warning them to leave if they brought danger. It was a fair demand. He looked at Ruby, awake and whispering about pancakes to Clara, and announced they were leaving. Outside the room, Ray handed him the Eastdock warehouse entry details, though they were scarce. Loading doors, guards, captive prisoners, a blood altar, and Mara's people preparing a bigger sacrifice after the gray rain started. Not enough for a meeting, but plenty for raid. Before nightfall, another pull caught his wrist as the rot mark flared. The last fourth act stub in his pocket vault fluttered against nothing, and on the hospital lobby screen, a public emergency broadcast showed the Old Monarch Theater with its doors wide open, lights burning on a stage with no power. 3 altar shapes stood under red curtains as a caption warned citizens to stay far away from role-based anomaly activity. Thanksgiving week, an empty theater, 3 roles waiting. His father's calendar had burned into fate. Watch because Daniel Keaton tried to hold dates together after intense grief had already ripped holes in them. His mother, Angela, had spent her life stitching other people back together until she came home in a casket. The coming holiday was built around reunions, yet he had 2 dead parents, 1 rescued child, and a city full of monsters pretending they owned the stage. He should have walked straight to Eastdock warehouse. Instead, True Sight gave him a colder line over the lobby screen. A missing role prevents final judgment. Compatible wound was detected. The Old Monarch Theater was no detour. It was a weapon waiting to decide if he was allowed to carry it. He went alone. The theater smelled of dust, damp velvet, and forgotten applause. No crowd waited outside. People were learning. This role-based anomaly sounded harmless until those roles started casting humans as props. 3 altars stood on the stage. 1 wore a cracked heroic mask. 1 wore a mourning veil. Another had a painted grin wide enough to swallow a child. The 4th space at center stage remained empty. True Sight opened across the required missing role, judge. The function was to pronounce a verdict over false grief, borrowed authority, and performed suffering. The offering demanded a blood mark from someone who lost family without ever selling their wound. The jester altar moved first, its painted grin tilted right toward him. A voice echoed from the empty theater, bright and cruel. No judge, just a thief in work boots. The heroic masked altar laughed in a low male voice, while the veiled altar whispered something that sounded like both a prayer and an accusation. Then he stepped onto the stage. The heroic mask altar cast a shadow of Daniel Keaton across the curtain, younger than he remembered him, one hand resting on a calendar that kept bleeding dates onto the floor. The veiled altar countered with Angela Keaton's hospital coat, empty at the shoulders, its sleeves hanging as if someone had walked out of life and left their work behind. The jester clapped its painted hands. Look, props, dead parents make such easy paint. His grip tightened on the soul dagger. Talk about a brutal trap. Rage would make him a grieving son, while grief would make him a begging child. Neither was the missing role. A judge had to stand there and expose the lie without letting it control the entire courtroom. The boards creaked under his shoes. The jester altar spoke again, and this time the entire theater heard the words, even though he was completely alone. What have you judged, Miles Keaton? A woman who abandoned you, some thugs, a tree with bad manners. It used his name. He hated that and liked even less that the jester was not wrong enough to ignore. The heroic mask altar flared, a shadow Figure raised a sword and pointed it right at him. A judge must stand above the story. The veiled altar lowered its head. A judge must suffer beneath it. The jester giggled. You are neither, just a hungry little man stealing costumes. The red judge space remained empty. He drew the soul dagger and sliced his palm. Blood ran down his wrist, bright against the rot mark. I am hungry, he said. That part is true. The jester's grin widened as he dragged his bleeding fingers across his face from brow to cheek, then across the other side, making a rough red mask over skin instead of paint. But I did not sell my dead, he declared. I did not sell Ruby or Ray, and I never sold myself back to Lydia for cash in a plaza. The theater lights turned red one by one. He stepped into the empty fourth space. He judged fake authority because he was sick of people renting it. Money, badges, syndicate marks, pretty tears and borrowed blood missed. If a role wanted a verdict, here it was. The jester altar snapped out fake. He looked at the painted grin, guilty. The word hit the stage like a dropped blade. The jester altar cracked. Its painted grin split down the center, and the laugh inside turned into a choke. The heroic mask altar bowed. The veiled altar lifted its head, the empty fourth space filled with red light around his blood-marked face as true sight burned clean. The red judge is recognized, and 3 legendary role items appear in a row. A black sleeve cord, a cracked bronze handbell, and a strip of red stage cloth that moves like it is breathing. Miles does not waste time reading every line. Each carries a role function, a fear effect, and a set connection. Then the center altar opens. A mask rises from it, red lacquer, black judgment lines. Mouth shaped neither smiling nor kind. Red judge mask, mythic grade, its function imposes fear authority over false roles, borrowed courage, and staged obedience. Strength increases when worn during judgment of predators. Limit breaks fake courage first. Real conviction still has teeth. Set promise incomplete. He takes mask. The black sleeve cord wraps around his wrist and then settles into his pocket vault. The bronze bell rings once without his hand touching it, and every rotten seat in the theater faces the stage like an audience waiting for punishment. The red cloth slides behind the mask and vanishes into its set connection. 3 pieces, 1 mask, 1 job, make false authority afraid before it finishes its speech. The jester altar, broken and still proud, forces out one last line. Final rehearsal tonight, theater of sorrows. Does not forget its judge. The words sink into the red judge mask, and then into the rot mark, where they burn beside the child of rots. Tension like 2 unpaid debts arguing over his body. Miles has taken what he came for. He stores the role items and mask in the pocket. Vault wipes blood from one eye and leaves old monarch theater before Pharaoh. Our thrill seekers get brave. Ruby is awake and alive. Ray has chosen loyalty. The red judge mask has chosen him. Then Ray calls from inside East Dock warehouse. His whisper is so low Miles can barely hear it over the rain. Beginning outside the theater doors, before replying, Miles holds the still water cup under the cracked lobby awning until gray rain fills the porcelain again. East Dock deserves bad weather in a cup. They have captives. Miles not just offers human slots in cages. Mara is here, Lydia too, and Troy just arrived. They are feeding people to a blood altar when gray rain starts. He looks at the street. Gray rain falls in silver sheets under the theater marquee. He opens a black umbrella from the lost and found rack, not because he needs it, but because villains love symbols, and he is tired of letting them have all the props. Stay small, he tells Ray. I am coming through the front door. He walks in the East Dock warehouse under a black umbrella while gray rain turns. Nightfall's borrowed power into wet jewelry. The front guard sees the umbrella first, then the red judge mask. Their black bands look sharp under the warehouse lights. Their eyes do not. One of them whispers that is the man. From the red and black lights, useful, fear has arrived before he does. The mask does not make him taller. It makes liars remember they are acting. One guard lifts a stun rod. The charm wrapped around his wrist sparks, catches gray rain under the loading awning, and dies. The second guard reaches for a radio. Miles breaks the radio with the umbrella handle and kicks him through the door. Inside, East Dock warehouse smells like rust, old cargo, and frightened people. Cages fill the room. Human slots, not a metaphor. Nightfall has made the insult physical, numbered, locked, and highly profitable. Men and women crouch behind chain-link panels. Captives bear altar marks on arms alongside hospital bracelets. On their wrists, debt papers are taped above cages with Nightfall tags hanging from the locks like price tags. Nightfall found a way to make Human desperation stackable. At the warehouse center, a sinister blood altar pulsed. Under hanging work lights, it stands larger than any public altar Miles has seen, not permanent like the blood crown altar, nor stable like a true system. This greedy imitation is built from altar fragments, stolen charms, and broken offerings with bowls of human blood nearby. Mara Sable stands in a dark coat. Lydia Wren stands near her, pale, bandaged, wearing a green luck charm. At her throat like a borrowed heartbeat, Troy Bancroft stands behind Lydia, close enough to claim her if she wins, far enough to deny her if she loses. His black Maybach sits waiting inside the warehouse right by the open bay door. Of course it does. Some men need a status object even during a human sacrifice. Rey Navarro kneels near the altar, a crate of failed rewards sitting in front of him. And a guard's blade against his neck, he spots Miles and does not smile. Smart move, smiling gets you killed. Mara looks up right as the first guard's body hits the floor. Her gaze locks onto his mask, then his hands, then the gray rain dripping from his umbrella. Mara calls out the name Miles Keaton. Clear enough for everyone in the warehouse, mockingly noting his costume. Miles simply closes his umbrella. No, he calmly responds. He brought a verdict. Lydia flinches at his voice. Troy does not. He still foolishly believes money can control the weather. He steps forward with both hands raised, looking polished but completely useless, begging him to wait. He promises he can pay, denying any involvement with the cages, offering money and properties. He begs him to name a price and leave him out. The captives hear him, so does Lydia. That matters. Miles looks at the Maybach, calling it his receipt. Troy's jaw drops. Suddenly, the egg cracks inside the pocket vault. The heavy pulse hits so hard his knees almost bend. The blood altar responds, rolling out a red light. Across the warehouse floor, crawling toward the pocket vault like this stolen ritual wants to feed his egg or be eaten by it. The Abyss Drake egg had absorbed hot chip mythic birth traits, calamity blood, wish avatar energy, blood moon residue, and briar hollow farm rot, along with every ugly meal Miles could afford. Now it smells a warehouse monster being born of fear. The egg decides it is done waiting. It bursts from the pocket vault in a shell of black fire. Every single head turns. Even Mara stops smiling. The egg hits the floor in front of the blood altar and splits open from top to bottom. A small drake climbs out, black scaled, red-veined, winged, and absolutely furious at the world for keeping her hungry. Her tail ends in a sharp, heart-shaped barb glowing pink red under the black shell. Her eyes lock onto Miles first, then the altar, then Troy's Maybach. True sight. Flashes one clean line. Vesper, bonded Abyss Drake, protector hatchling in a mythic growth state active, no romance, no useless decoration, a living disaster with strong opinions. Troy whispers in terror, but Vesper answers by leaping past him. The blood altar screams as the monster inside tries to form. It rises, halfway displaying red limbs and stolen faces, before Vesper strikes its chest. For one ugly second, the altar hits back. Red cords snap around Vesper's wings and try to drain her before she finishes being born. She shrieks, completely furious, refusing. He isn't afraid, cutting a cord with his soul dagger. He yells, "Eat the altar, not the people." Vesper tears free, dragging the half-born beast across the floor and slamming it right through Troy's luxury Maybach. Glass explodes, metal buckling under the force. Troy whimpers, a sound no rich man should ever make. The beast dies under the vehicle before it can even fully form, but Vesper's wings smoke where those blood cords touched her, standing on the crushed hood with jaws dripping red light. She unleashes a sharp cry that forces every Nightfall guard to step back in fear. Years of poverty never gave him a luxury car, but one bag of hot chips gave him a beast that eats luxury cars for breakfast. Lydia just stares at Vesper, then at him. The memory of the old plaza returns to her eyes, hot chips, red beams, and her smile fading under the harsh light. She finally realizes she did not trade up when she got into Troy's Maybach. She basically climbed right into a target. Mara acts first. She slices her palm, flinging her own blood toward the altars. Broken base, yelling to feed the slots. The cages glow red as every captive's mark begins to burn. That is the line she crosses in front of everyone. She isn't trying to escape just yet. She wants to cash in on the prisoners before losing this warehouse. He draws his soul dagger. Guilty, he declares through the red judge mask. The mask boomerangs his voice across the warehouse. Nightfall guards with weak courage charms stumble. Two drop their weapons. One falls to his knees and vomits instant karma. Borrowed obedience cracks under that mask like cheap paint. He charges across the floor. A guard swings a hooked chain at Ray's neck, but the fate Watch shows the arc. He cuts the chain, grabs Ray, and throws him safely behind a cargo pallet. He calls for keys, and Ray tosses him a ring from his sleeve. Chosen. Loyalty means quick reflexes. He throws the keys to the nearest cage, a woman inside. Catches them and immediately starts freeing people before anyone even tells her to be brave. Mara's blood mist bursts around her, not toward him but toward the side bay, the same escape trick that saved her in West Rail District and rescued Lydia in the loading yard. This time gray rain pours heavily through the open bay door. This time his Stillwater cup is completely full. He pulls the cup from his pocket vault and splashes the stored rain directly into the blood mist. Mara screams as the mist collapses back into flesh halfway across the floor. She crashes onto the concrete on one knee, one arm solid, and her shoulders still turning to fog. The rain burns right through her escape Art, leaving her gasping like a fish on a dry dock. One splash, but not forever. He kicks her knife away. You are weather dependent, he notes. That is embarrassing for a commander. She lunges anyway. Predators are educational. That way, his soul dagger slices her coat open, pinning her shadow just 1 inch from her throat. Vesper snarls from the Maybach hood, while Ray drags a captive away from those burning marks. The freed woman keeps unlocking cages while Troy crawls behind the crushed car, leaving poor Lydia standing completely alone in a rain of glass. Mara looks at the cages, then back at the altar. Even beaten, she smiles. You think freeing them matters, Mara sneers, because Nightfall has plenty more warehouses. Then he realizes he needs a map. He pulls the blood oath worm tube from his pocket vault. The pale child worm twists hungrily toward Mara's open wound. The mother worm stays inside the nest, heart sealed to him through blood and absolute will. He had never used this pair. Petty thief, a coward, or a desperate man, but Mara smiled while human slots burned. That earned her the leash. Her eyes widened at the sight of the tube. Mara whispered that was the best consent a predator ever gave. He drove the child worm into the wound under her collarbone. Mara's body immediately arched. The warehouse lights flickered. The worm vanished under her skin as a black-red line curled around her throat like a collar drawn from inside her body. She tried to form blood mist again, but the line tightened. Mara hit the floor and screamed into the concrete. True sight confirmed the bind, a blood oath worm. Child host established. Command pressure and tracking were active, with betrayal response armed. Mara Sable, Nightfall local commander, and blood mist escape user had become a living key instead of a locked door. The worm could force doors open. It could not force Mara to make the safe door obvious. Lydia saw it happen, and that broke the last borrowed pride on her face. She ripped at the green luck charm on her throat as if she could hide it before he looked. Too late. True sight had already labeled it as unstable, borrowed fortune tied to her. Mara's mark. He crossed to Lydia, who backed away until her spine hit the crushed Maybach. She whispered Miles, but this time his name had no charm left on it. As she begged, Troy crawled out from behind the car and pointed at her, claiming she brought him here because she thought Miles was weak and Nightfall would handle him, asserting he did not know her like that. The captives heard him abandon her completely. One captive, a man with a bloody mouth, spat right at her broken shoe. A massive reality check. All of that pride collapsed in an instant. Lydia looked at Troy as if betrayal was unfair when it happened in her direction. Miles tore the luck charm from her throat. As she reached, he caught her wrist, telling her coldly that she was finished renting miracles. He slipped the charm into his pocket vault, saving it for the blood crown altar later. Then he shoved Lydia away from the car and toward the freed captives. Nobody moved to protect her. Troy held out his black card with shaking fingers, stammering he could still pay. Vesper hopped down from the Maybach hood. The card caught fire before she touched it. Troy dropped it and ran 3 steps before a warehouse guard he ignored earlier shoved him back into the open. His fake wealth had reached the refund counter. FARO arrived after the stronghold had already fallen, arriving to witness a finished fight rather than a rescue. Director Isaac Penn stepped through the side entrance with Agent Flint close behind him, alongside a line of armed responders blocking the doorway. Flint spotted Miles, saw the red judge mask in his hand, saw Vesper on the crushed Maybach, and wisely chose not to raise his weapon all the way. Director Isaac Penn did raise his, but then he saw the cages, the freed captives, Rain Navarro carrying bleeding woman toward the bay door, Lydia on the floor, Mara bound and shaking, while Troy tried to hide behind a car Vesper had already ruined. Penn lowered his gun first, and the rest of FARO slowly followed, addressing Keaton. Director Penn pointed out that he was standing in the middle of a federal disaster scene. He fixed it, but Penn noted he destroyed evidence. Miles looked at the blood altar Vesper had torn open. It was biting people. Vesper chirped once from the Maybach hood, pleased with herself. Penn's eyes shifted to her and back to Miles, then to the cages, and finally to the broken altar still leaking red light. Whatever speech Penn prepared dies right there. Good, some authority must break. It has to crumble. Director Isaac Penn pulls a white card from his vest. He holds it out, a temporary contract. It demands he handle all declared threats in Fair Lake City without being arrested. Stay locatable and do not feed civilians to the dragon. Vesper hisses at that. He dryly warns them that she is pretty picky. No one laughs. This contract isn't built on trust. It is just fear-wearing paperwork. Fine by him, Fear has secured much worse deals. He takes the card. Agent Flint's camera hangs against his chest. The cracked lens is covered protectively. He acts like the footage might get eaten. He points and warns him about the next throw. Throw 2 sensor discs next time. Flint swallows hard and notes the advice. Penn hears the exchange and understands the main point of his threat. His tracker only escaped before because a bigger target took priority. That does not make Pharaoh safe. It just makes them scheduled. Do not mistake this for obedience, he warns. Penn replies, not for friendship either. Mara laughs weakly from the floor, sounding completely toxic as her oath tightens. Her throat tightens, but she still forces out a question about Nightfall. Why did they know the Keaton names first? The whole warehouse goes dead silent. He turns. Mara smiles through the blood. She names his parents, Daniel and Angela, old channels, old dirty payments. They weren't the first bodies buried by clean badges with dirty hands. Look at Penn's locked jaw. He didn't deny the accusation fast enough. This isn't the whole truth, but it gives them a deadly direction. The crimson judge mask warms up in his hand. The rot mark tightens. Out past the rain, the theater still demands its judge. And the child of rot has already noticed the mortal who stole everything. Lydia is cuffed alive by Pharaoh because Penn wanted bait, but he wants her. Watching her borrowed world rot away, Troy gets dragged out. He screams about high-priced legal teams that absolutely nobody respects anymore. Mara remains down until he commands her to unlock the hidden Nightfall vault. The secret vault beneath East Dock Warehouse. Ray stands beside him as the first freed captive walks into the rain. There are no thanks. Ray just stares at Ruby's photo on his phone. He looks at the cages, then the scorched deed. Ray notes Northcutt is finished. He almost smiles. This warehouse is no longer Nightfall's fortress. It is just inventory. Before sunrise, he takes Lydia's green luck charm. Back to Northcutt meets and drops it straight into the blood crown altar. The charm flashes once, desperate to pretend it still has a favored owner. But the altar's crimson teeth chew right through it. Half a bottle rises. From the stone, dark and bitter, her borrowed miracle is now his fuel. Which is exactly the kind of romance she deserves. By dawn, Lydia has lost Troy, her protection, her luck, and her pride. She will never call him a loser again. Troy loses his car, his black card, and everyone who mistook wealth for courage. Mara loses her escape, her autonomy, and the safety of being useful. But only to herself. Nightfall hadn't lost every single stronghold, not yet. It only lost East Dock, its local commander, those easy cages, and the right to slip through. Fairly quietly, she kept Northcutt meets. She took East Dock. She had Vesper, the Maybach's cold corpse, as her first trophy, holding the red judge mask in her hand, a government contract in her pocket, and a bound commander. He knew where the Wilder Syndicate hid its doors. Gold and diamonds still meant something in the old world, but in hers, trash became blood, fear became steel. Grief turned to judgment, and that strange, cheap hot chip egg finally opened its eyes.